Hello, and welcome to Media-eval, a medieval pop culture podcast, where we talk about how medieval and medieval-inspired movies, TV, and books depict the medieval world. What did they get right? What did they get wrong? And what do they tell us about how modern people see the medieval past? I'm Sarah F. Decker, a medieval historian, and today I'll be talking about the hotly anticipated Netflix Christmas movie, The Night Before Christmas, with Meghan Griffin. Hi, Meghan.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Thanks so much for coming on. Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and why you were so excited to talk about this movie with me?
I am not a medievalist person at all. I actually Googled this morning to see what books I've actually read from the time, because I know I had to take Brit Lit prior to, I think it's 1500s or something. And
yeah,
so I have read a few, but I love these ridiculous Christmas movies. And I think the moment I saw this one announced, I sent it over to you and knew, just based on the cover alone and how shiny the armor was, it's going to be amazing. It was going to be so good.
Yeah. It's a very shiny movie.
It is a very shiny movie. Like, there was one I almost paused to be like, her teeth and lip gloss combination is just like the sun or something. It's just so bright.
Yeah, and his armor too. It's like, wow, you did a heavy polishing job.
Yes. Netflix has that good shiny cleanness.
Oh, yes. A brief recap. So Cole, a 14th century English knight, travels forward in time to 2019, where he meets Brooke, a teacher who has given up on true love. Brooke hits him with her car and assumes that he is now suffering from amnesia because he thinks he is a medieval knight. Therefore, as you always do with random men that clearly have mental health issues, she invites him to stay with her while he regains his real memory. They fall deeply in love over the course of a week, as you do in this sort of Christmas movie. And It turns out that falling in love was in fact Cole's true quest. He returns very briefly to 1334 before coming back to spend the rest of his life with Brooke in 2019. Brooke is Vanessa Hudgens. Mm-hmm. Cole is Josh Whitehouse, who has been in things, I think, but not in things I've actually seen.
He's in, I think it's called Poldark or something like that, which is been highly recommended to me a few times, but I have not actually sat down to watch.
Yeah, I've also heard good things about it, but yeah, haven't seen it. Madison, Brooke's sister, is the only other person in this cast that I had heard of at all before, who was Emmanuel Shrieky, who I also have not actually seen in anything, but I feel like I've seen her in a lot of magazines.
I will admit I watched a lot of Entourage at one point in life.
Okay.
It was a very easy show to leave on, and I believe she played someone's girlfriend / fiance. I don't know, but that's why that's where I recognized her from.
And she's fine.
Yeah,
as an actor.
Yeah,
she's serviceable.
I get her confused with. There's another actress that I swear every time I always think it's the other person, and now I can't even remember. Unreal, the star of Unreal. That's who I get her confused with, and I am totally blanking on her name.
I don't have anything else to really say about the cast for this particular movie, since, as I said, I've not heard of anyone else.
I did take a look, and both a director and writer are also women, and I took a quick peek at the writer's Twitter, just because I don't know how sincere and
right
that they want these movies to be, or if they literally are just trying to, is what we're doing, talking about this, is people poking fun at it, what they're looking for. And I think that is the vibe that they've been going for based on what I saw, which makes me feel better.
Yes, that definitely makes me feel better about this movie.
Because the message that kind of comes through, I was like, oh no, this might be sincere.
Great. The politics of this movie, as we'll get into in more detail, are questionable. That leads into the first main section, or enumeratio, which is kind of longer recap and more detailed discussion of the film. We open in Norwich, England on December 18th, 1334, as the title card explains. And we meet Cole and his brother Geoffrey, who is about to have his knighting ceremony.
Yes, they are going to hunt Gwynnefold the hawk.
I don't think they know what hawking is. Actually,
no.
They seem to think that they're following or hunting the hawk, as opposed to they're hunting rabbits, and then the hawk goes and gets the rabbits for them, is actually what hawking is.
Okay, yeah, it's not explained either way.
No,
so, just that there's a game plan. We don't know what the game plan is, but there is a game plan based on the name.
But if you're having a hawking competition, everyone should have their own hawk.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
As opposed to there's just this one hawk.
Yeah, like we're barely 30 seconds into this movie and he's like, so it's not Cedric or Hudgens? And I'm like, okay, this means something, right? No.
Nope.
No,
Absolutely not.
not at all.
We then cut back to 2019, or cut forward to 2019, where we meet our other hero of this film, Brooke, who is a teacher. She's in her classroom and she's having this conversation with this student who I guess did very poorly on a test and ordinarily does very well.
What does she teach?
It said in some of the promotional materials that that she's a science teacher.
Okay,
but
so that's okay.
I don't think that is apparent at any point.
No.
Like maybe if you looked around the classroom really carefully, which I did not do,
I did not
you'd be
either.
able to piece it together. But it never says anything about what she teaches now.
Yeah. And it's not like if she's was a history teacher, maybe more of that, or I don't know, science. You could talk about time travel and black holes and things. Something that just, there's nothing. She's just a general teacher. It's just what you have in high school.
Yeah, I mean, she must have skills to be a high school teacher, but we have no idea what they are, and they are never relevant to anything in this movie.
They are not.
So she has this conversation with this student who apparently did poorly on her test because her boyfriend dumped her.
Have been there.
She has this whole conversation about her goals and how she should be focusing on her goals instead of on men and true love, and this, like, waiting for your prince is not a real thing.
But every girl wants to be a princess.
Yes.
That I was like, well, okay.
Okay.
I like this message of, it's not a you're in high school, get over it kind of message. It's a focus on your goals. Like, let's take it in this stride kind of, rather than, it didn't feel like she was talking down to her, even though she used weird language.
Yeah, it's actually a really nice speech and a really nice message, which I feel like then just gets completely undermined by the rest of this movie.
Yes, in fact.
Back deep in the woods of Norwich.
Before, we did have a lineup of the knights, and you and I talked about this briefly, but I want to read you the lineup of these knights. So we have Aldris Drake, Blake Keaton, Dalton Hurst, Marlowe Walsh, Spalding Ramsey, Jeffrey Leon, whose full name is Jeffrey Alexander Edward Leon, and Cole Leon, which is Cole Christopher Frederick Leon.
So I'll talk more about names in a subsequent section, but all I'm going to say for now is that with the exception of Jeffrey, almost none of those sound in the slightest bit medieval, and most of them sound like either a lineup of fraternity brothers who have probably been accused of sexual assault.
Oh, yeah.
With like a smattering of Harry Potter characters.
Yes. It's like they're going deep undercover. And yeah.
So those are some choices. Deep in the woods of Norwich, as the title card again explains to us, Cole meets a crone. This is a word that is harped upon throughout this movie.
My first thought was, God, I want that wig. Like, it is a shiny, silver, perfectly tousled. It's wonderful. It's just like, I want this wig.
Yeah. And so I watched this movie actually with my parents, who were not fans. But my mother's comment was that her favorite thing about this movie was that it has more depictions of attractive and put together and positively depicted overall older women.
Agreed.
Than most movies.
Yeah.
So good for them.
Yeah.
So this crone, I guess, has nothing better to do with her life than to send knights on miscellaneous magical quests. And she meets this guy, and, like, he seems nice, I get. Like, Cole, like, he seems perfectly nice.
Yeah.
I guess. And her immediate thing is, like, I think you need to open your heart, and so now I'm going to send you on this quest to do that.
Yeah, like, there's no indication that... So you became a knight 6 years ago, which we learn later. And it's not like we're told to become a knight, you have to do this one giant quest, or, like...
Which isn't a thing.
No, or like that this didn't open with him like heartbroken over someone. Like, it opened up with him and his brother being jolly. So it's like, this is even more out of the blue for everybody, not just him. We're just like, okay, cool.
Yeah, she makes it sound like there's this big problem with him and the way he's living his life, which there is no evidence for.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very weird. She gives him some magic medallion and he disappears and arrives in the future. His horse, Sherwin, who is sadly left in the past, just takes the fuck off because he is clearly just not on board with the situation, which is fair.
I do really love his relationship with his horse.
His relationship with his horse might actually be the relationship in this movie with the most actual chemistry.
Yes, agreed. Agreed.
He arrives at this weird Christmas village situation, which this sort of movie seems to think very deeply is a thing.
So I live in New York, and there are a ton of holiday festivals. Like, you go to any park, there's going to be these big holiday festivals. So it wasn't too weird to see one, but this one is so themed and has cosplayers and everything. And that was a little weird. And you can just walk into it. I feel like most of the time when you've got this kind of interaction, it's going to be ticketed and be costly and, overbearing. And this just seems to be the center of town.
It especially seems odd because this does not seem like an especially large town.
No.
And so who is the anticipated audience for this? Do they think people are coming to Bracebridge, Ohio to go to this? As you said, it doesn't seem like they're charging admission, and it seems like it must cost a huge amount of money. Who's paying for it?
Yeah, I find it very weird out there.
Some people see Cole and assume that he's part of the festival and take a selfie with him. He is very chill about cell phones and cell phone cameras.
Yeah, so it hit me, I don't know, were mirrors a thing in medieval times?
Yeah, people would have had mirrors, so okay. I guess he knows what a mirror is.
Well, I guess because, they're showing him looking at the camera, and I'm like, do you know what you look like? Or would this be... I mean, obviously the whole time he should just be yelling witchcraft, but it was a moment of do you know you're looking at yourself kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, so I think he would get that it's something like a mirror, because by the 14th century they would have had mirrors, but it's still, I think it still would have been surprising and a little weird. I mean, the quality of mirrors is honestly probably not as good as the quality of a cell phone camera.
Right.
And so his reflection would have been clearer and sharper probably than he had seen it before.
Yeah.
And it's also they're doing something with it and it flashes. And
yeah, that would have been a camera flash. I mean, my phone, I got it this year, and it has the night camera so good I never need flash. I was trying to take pictures of Penn Station had a power outage, and I'm trying to take pictures to show how creepy and post-apocalyptic it looked this was a couple months ago. And I'm my damn camera's too good. It's it doesn't look that bad on camera.
Right. Night cameras. So difficult. Brooke is at this festival with her niece, who is, I think, named Claire.
Yes.
And Claire goes and asks Santa, she asks for a puppy. And then among other things, she also asks, can you bring my Aunt Brooke a new boyfriend, someone really nice who won't cheat on her?
I do appreciate that, because this happens all the time in these Christmas movies where, can you bring me a new dad? Can you bring my mom a new so-and-so? And kids don't do that. No kid is going to ask. They may ask for a new dad or something, but they're not going to be can you bring my mom something? This one at least had the boyfriend walked by. So at least it could have been on Claire's mind and is a little less out of the blue. And almost feels like a joke rather than a sincere Christmas wish.
True. But all of her wishes come true.
Oh, that Christmas magic.
Cole sees an airplane, which he describes as a flying steel dragon.
Yes.
Because, of course, he thinks dragons are real. Because, of course, everybody in the Middle Ages just thinks dragons are real. It's fine.
Of course.
The plane seems like it's flying really low, too.
Yeah. It also... I watched this 2.5 times, and I still can't figure out, because it kind of goes down and then back up. I can't figure out, because it's maybe it's taking off or landing, but it does such a weird movement that I'm nope, this just feels like you're hitting turbulence, and that is really low. Really, really low.
Yeah, and especially because I kind of can't believe that this town is that near an airport, or at least not a major airport.
Not an airport that's going to have a commercial jet.
Right, exactly, which is clearly what this is. So they're at this village, and, they kind of sort of cross paths briefly, but then, she's driving through the snow and hits him with her car.
Yeah, the snowstorm that she shouldn't be driving in. Where is she driving from? I guess she dropped off Claire. No, her mom came to get her.
I guess she was at the Christmas village and now is driving home.
Yeah, it's just a random snow pop-up. There's no way this town's that big enough that this snowstorm just kind of came out of nowhere.
It's very weird. It's probably more Christmas magic.
Oh, yes.
So she hits him with her car. Since he's wearing armor, it apparently does not even get dented when it gets hit by a car.
Yeah, this super authentic armor that they talk about is so shiny and no dents.
Yeah.
Not even
So
a crack.
shiny, yeah, no dents. It's not the worst I've seen in terms of attempts to make 14th century armor in terms of the style, but it's just too nice for somebody of his stature. Like, it's the kind of armor that the king would wear for ceremonial occasions.
Yeah, it's definitely not someone who's been a knight for 6 years and, like, in the woods.
Right, exactly. Like, this is not functional armor for a working knight, essentially.
Right.
That part is not entirely working. And also, like, armor has various purposes that it is made for. And it seems possible to me that if you were wearing armor and got hit by a car, you would be in much better shape than if you got hit by a car and weren't wearing armor.
Yeah.
But it's really not what armor is made for.
No, I can't imagine.
The fact that he clearly, like, doesn't even have a bruise and that the armor is also not even dented does not seem super likely to me.
He's also not wearing a helmet. Like, he just kind of has the chainmail top. Like, you would still hit your head. I mean, it is because of the snow. There's no way she's driving more than 20 miles an hour. But still.
Yeah. But I guess that is why they assumed that he could certainly have a concussion.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite valid from their standpoint. Him just to stand up and pop up and be like, look at this steed you have.
What village is this?
Yeah, that's another thing that that the movie doesn't touch on. Not only does he travel in time, he travels in space.
Yeah.
England to Ohio.
Yeah.
I don't know why this baffled me so much, because I love time travel romance stuff. Like, I am very big into Outlander, but one of the defining factors of Outlander is, like, you travel in time. You are in the same space. You end up in the same space in a different time. So, like, in one of the books, they're in America and her daughter comes through, and it's like she has to travel now from Scotland to America, and I like that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Not this whole, and suddenly I'm in Ohio.
Right. And it's also a thing, I mean, there are various things that they get into that, you know, are obviously surprising to him about this world. The thing that he never seems to ask about is, like, where is Ohio?
Yeah. Just like, so I'm not in England. Okay, how do you know you're not in England?
Yeah, he's like, he should just be like, what's Ohio? And then there's never the explanation of, like, what the United States is, or the fact that he's in a part of the world that he did not know existed.
Yeah, 'cause especially he gets obsessed with Netflix movies. Well, I'm sure, but, like, the amount of history that's passed and how much reading he would, like, it would be so much better for him just to sit down and understand, like, the progression of England and the fighting with France and Spain and everything and how that led to America. And yeah. But instead, you know, we just accept that Ohio is a thing.
Okay, Ohio, not England. Fine.
Yeah. So it's a Seneca word, so it's a Native American word, so it's not even, like, English or French. Yeah.
Right. I mean, so the fact that his response is not, what is Ohio?
Yeah.
A word that he has never heard before is not likely. That he's just like, oh, okay, I guess I'm not in England.
I mean, you're not, but...
It is also very nice. I mean, so it is also very nice, and I'll talk about this more later, that he is also just not surprised by, like, seeing black people, which...
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I understand why the movie made the decision not to get into very complicated racial dynamics, but... the fact that he's just, like, very chill about this black man who is, he's a cop, and he's, you know, so he's in, like, an authority position, and he's just very chill about this is interesting.
Yeah, I appreciate the color blindness of this movie.
Yeah.
And also sexist blindness, I guess.
Yeah, which, again, I understand why they went that direction.
Yeah.
But it's weird.
Yeah.
They take him to the hospital because they assume that he has a concussion and there's something horribly wrong with him.
Understandably.
Yeah. And he, I guess, goes through an MRI machine and describes it as your tube of torture, which I feel like is not wrong, to be honest.
No, not at all. Yeah. I went both ways on this. And I feel like this is probably something that comes up in any medieval, you know, time travel thing. He has no immune system for this world.
Nope.
And I'm also not convinced that our antibiotics would actually fight any diseases that he would bring.
Right.
And a hospital seems doubly dangerous for both of those aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. That, yeah, he very possibly is going to give, you know, like some person who's like has an autoimmune disease or something and like does not have like a properly functioning immune system. He is clearly going to infect.
Yeah, I mean, his nails alone. Ugh.
Yeah, lovely. She decides to take him home with her to stay in her guest house, which is the dumbest decision any person has ever made.
The only other option is that he could stay at the station until his memory comes back, which also seems like a bad idea.
Right.
I don't know where you would put someone who has no ID or money and thinks they're from a different time, but she did hit him with a car.
I see why she feels guilty, but just, okay, you have this guy who, like, clearly something is not quite right with him.
Yes.
And your response is, great, let me invite you into my home, as opposed to being worried he might murder her.
Considering that the first, like, she's like, cool, hi, Cole. And he's like, it is Sir Cole. Right. And I was like, nope, I'm sorry. The first time you're, like, insisting on your title, you're out.
Nope. I mean, I don't think I would let a random strange man stay in my home anyway, even if he wasn't claiming to be a medieval knight.
I guess it's a good thing that it's a guest house.
Right.
Instead of, like, her actual house.
Yeah, but still.
I mean, it's still her house, but, like, she can lock the door.
Yes. The cop also is, like, very chill about the fact that he just, like, has a sword and is going to keep that.
Yeah.
Cole meets the radio in her car.
I love how you put that.
To which he asks, where are the minstrels playing that lyrical melody? And apparently medieval knights are just like 4-year-olds with no impulse control, because he just starts like pressing buttons because like, what does this do? What does this do?
I would be the same way, but yeah, I feel like he would be more terrified.
Right, and like, I don't think I'd do that if I ended up on a futuristic spaceship.
No, that's very true. But I also feel like we have the common sense of button can be bad.
Right. And like I say doesn't quite have that, but on the other hand, like, I don't know, it just seems odd that he's just not more wary.
Yes.
Like he's very childlike in a lot of ways.
He's also fascinated by like comparing the car to a horse.
Yes.
Like the wheel is a rein.
Yes, he like really gets into the like, okay, I get this horse, and it's like, do you?
Yeah,
I don't think you do.
Let's think for a minute. How do you gear shift on a horse?
He gets to her house, which she describes as a lovely manor.
There is at least a throwaway line of that she inherited this house. Because it is a really nice house. I mean, any house with a guest house, as I look at my 400 square feet.
This house is
wonderful.
Gigantic. It has a guest house. Yeah, I mean, you know, it is the Midwest. Obviously, the real estate prices are a bit less, but still, like, this is a massive house.
And we also learned that her father was a cop.
Yes.
Likely dead, because we don't have that confirmed quite yet. And cop budgets aren't that great, especially small town. It's going to be better in the bigger city.
Right.
So mom's making the big bucks.
Yeah, mom clearly must have been the breadwinner, or there's like family money going back generations.
Yeah, that may be also it, because who knows?
Mom's grandfather was like a railroad magnate and they still have the money left over or something.
Well, it does feel like they're trying to build a Netflix holiday cinema universe, so maybe she's related to the princess swap people too.
There you go. Maybe she's just actual royalty.
Yeah.
And he does go into calling her Lady Brooke, I guess, based on the house. He assumes that she is of his class.
He's never confused that there's not any servants or a master of the house or anything.
Nope. There's a lot of things he's not confused about. I mean, like, the fact that she's wearing pants this entire time, as is almost every woman he sees, and he's never like, why are you wearing pants? That's men's clothing.
Yeah. Also, I have no idea how corsets were definitely not a thing, but I guess, like, how covered were women back then?
They could have potentially had, like, relatively low necklines. That certainly would have been a possibility. Okay. And she actually, I think, is pretty covered up.
Because it's winter, yes.
She's winter. And also, like, she seems to own an immense amount of turtlenecks, many of which have ruffles, which I don't think work for anyone.
It is a unique style, for sure.
Oh, yes. So she's, like, pretty covered up overall. It's just, like, it's very much not the style of medieval clothing. There would have been also a lot of full skirts, which you never...
Form-fitting. That's where I was trying to get to. Her clothes are very form-fitting.
Yeah, things are a little too form-fitting, especially on the bottom.
Yes. Very high waist, accenting.
Yeah, like, he's getting, like, a lot more, like, butt shots than he would have with women at the court.
There actually are surprisingly a lot of butt shots. They do have a lot of her at this, like, right angle to make her ass just look great.
Yeah.
Which it does.
Him too, actually. Yeah. He also meets the freezer, which he is deeply perplexed by.
Of all things to be deeply perplexed by, like,
Right,
you
just
know,
like,
electricity.
They bring the cold of the outside inside.
Yeah. I feel like there's probably some kind of like electric buzz that we all grow up with that would be just so confusing with them. And yet it's the freezer.
Right. Yeah, it's the freezer is like the most upsetting thing.
Yeah.
And he also lets her know that he was knighted by King Edward III.
Okay.
I guess they're trying to figure out now what to do with him. So he takes a bath and starts kind of like wandering around basically half naked. So she also gets to like ogle him a little bit.
I mean, I did appreciate the like wet chest shot, but also like
yeah.
that I think was the first point I threw up my hands and was like, oh, honestly, he would walk around naked. Like,
right.
You don't have to show him naked, but he would walk around naked.
He would either walk around completely naked, this like towel thing is silly, or he would recognize that it was not appropriate to be completely nude in front of a woman of his own class.
Sure.
Oh, it is perfectly acceptable for me to like walk around like just shirtless in this manner is like not a thing that would have occurred to people.
Also, the fact that he knows how to wrap a towel around his waist. Yeah, okay.
Right. I mean, I find that hard now, so like...
Exactly.
Brooke's ex-boyfriend apparently left so much clothing at her house that he can be now fully clothed.
I mean, I do greatly appreciate the Christmas sweater that he's in.
Right. I guess it was, I guess it was last Christmas that he dumped her. It was after last Christmas that he dumped her. And did not want that sweater back, which is fair.
Yeah.
He then, I guess, decides that he's hungry, I guess. So he tries to light a fire in her yard.
Where did he get the wood? There's no explanation. There's no shot of something broken.
No.
There's not really any trees.
I at first thought it was a Christmas decor, and it's not.
No.
Because he destroys that later.
I also do appreciate, like, he's doing this. She's on the phone with her sister explaining what's going on. And she says something about his sword being a weapon. But it is said in such a way that I'm like, this is an innuendo, isn't it?
Like, right. And it's simultaneously, like, it's innuendo, but it's also like, but he does have an actual sword.
Yeah. That is, like,
which
probably
is
dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah. He has this fire, and he is also, with his sword, trying to hunt a skunk.
Yeah.
Which is also, I mean, I guess he's desperate, but I think he would know that that's not actually how you hunt.
I would hope.
I mean, he doesn't have a bow and arrow, but that's really what you would want. I mean, you wouldn't actually... Yeah, or setting a trap. Like, you wouldn't be chasing around a skunk with a sword.
Like, high up above your shoulder.
Right. Like, it is also, like, that is one of the, like, various shots where it's also, like, nobody put a lot of effort into teaching this actor how to hold a sword.
Yeah.
And, which I guess I understand because he's not doing a lot of, like, real combat with it, but...
Not until, the Christmas decorations become dangerous.
Right. So he tries to hunt this skunk, which she's like, no, you can't do this. And she takes him to a diner, which is so awkward.
Yeah.
Like, it's a parade of all of the most awkward things that could happen, essentially.
She asks what he wants to eat, and he says dark bread, some, boar, some porridge, something. And all I could think of is modern food is going to destroy his stomach.
Yes, the fact that he does not spend the next day of this movie just, like, taking a shit. Maybe that's actually why he was up all night, as we'll get to, watching Netflix.
That's why the binge happened. Got it.
Right. But yeah, so he has, like, 2 cheeseburgers or something.
Yeah. Oh, and he's obsessed with hot chocolate.
Yes, this is the, like, beginning of the hot chocolate leitmotif in this movie, which is, like, so intense that it's like, did somebody pay them for this?
You would think so, because there is a scene of them buying hot chocolate, and yet it is not a recognizable brand.
Right. Like, is there, like, Big Hot Cocoa out there who is, like...
I like hot chocolate, but I am so snobby about my hot chocolate. Like, it's got to be fancy. Like, I don't make it at home because it's got to be, like, Jacques Therese hot chocolate. Like, it's not something I just, like, go around drinking.
Right. And I do get, like, he's never had chocolate before.
Right.
I do get that it would be an intense and special experience for him. But
he keeps calling it mead, though.
So much. Right. Yeah, which is so weird because it has nothing in common with mead except for the fact that they're both vaguely sweet.
Yeah, it's not alcoholic, at least. I mean, I guess it could be.
Right. It's not alcoholic, but also the taste has nothing in common. He orders another hamburger by yelling another one wench, which is bad.
Yeah. I feel like that even would have been bad back then, but yeah.
Yeah, like, considering how much effort they go to make it seem like he's this very nice and respectful person who goes out of his way to be very nice to this, like, random old woman that he meets in the woods.
Yeah.
It's a very weird choice to have him yell the another one wench at a server.
Yeah.
And not be somewhat more polite there. It just doesn't seem like it actually fits with what they're trying to do with his character.
No, not at all.
Brooke doesn't eat, apparently. She eats like one bite of her cheeseburger and he's ordering another one. It's like, just take hers.
Exactly.
And it's just very much this like, okay, so yeah, so you, I mean, it, you know, I mean, obviously there's the other trope of you have like super skinny women who it's like, haha, it's so cute that I love eating because I'm tiny.
Yep. I ordered a burger because I can and you won't judge me.
Right. But it's also like, I'm not sure it's better to have her order the burger and then just eat like 2 bites.
Yeah.
It's kind of gross. Cole tells Brooke that apparently there's this like woman Matilda that he's technically supposed to marry, but he has to fulfill his quest, which isn't a thing.
Yeah, like, so he is technically betrothed?
I guess.
I do kind of feel bad for her now, like.
I mean, I do too, although honestly, I'm betrothed and then my like intended spouse just mysteriously disappears. You know, it happens. They find you a different intended spouse.
That's true.
It doesn't seem like they actually have a relationship.
Yeah, because my thought was Brooke can actually survive without a spouse. Like, that's 2019. Right. Matilda probably needs a man just to, you know, have any value in life. Oh my God, that hurts. But you're right. They would have instantly been like, all right, well, who's next on our list? Who can we marry off to now?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, it would have been worse if they'd actually been married because that would have put her in an awkward position of, okay, we don't know if he's dead or not. And so can we kind of marry her to somebody because then it's kind of bigamy.
Yeah.
There it might be because we don't know if he's alive or not. So that would have been a problem. But the like, they're betrothed and then he just disappears. It's basically fine. They can really just marry her to somebody else.
Yeah. You're good, Matilda.
Yeah, Matilda will be fine. And then, of course, it turns out, because it has to be this parade of awkwardness, that her ex-boyfriend is in the same diner with his new girlfriend, who might be the person that he cheated with, I guess. I don't know.
That seems to be, I think that's actually what she says, but we don't get really anybody's backstory in any depth. We have no idea how long they were dating. We have no idea how serious it was. He cheated. We got that. We don't know if he cheated once. He never seems to notice that she's around or, like, there's no repercussions for him at all.
Right. You would think that he would be slightly awkward around her, especially because it seems like her and her family practically, like, own the town.
Yeah.
And everybody in the town is on her side and takes
Exactly.
him.
Yeah. So, like, the fact that he just frolics.
It's very weird.
Yeah. Also, so there's another, like, there's a B plot through all of this. David, who's, like, a father with a bunch of kids that, like, we meet when they're waiting for Santa. Does he work at this diner? Like, there's a long focus on the guy behind the counter. I mean, to be honest, there's also, like, 6 redheads, and I never could tell which one was actually the neighbor or not. So I don't know if this is just, like, brunette white guy blindness or if, like, this is his job.
I think it might have been him because I think there was a reference at some point to the fact that he works multiple jobs because he's the only poor person in town.
That's right. Okay.
Which is also not, I think they like vaguely make this reference to the fact that like he used to have money and he lost his money and his wife is dead.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand medical bills. Like, I just upped my life insurance just in case because, which my boss told me was ridiculous, but because of the health problems that I have, I don't want to leave anybody, you know, having to pay or having to, you know, go into massive debt because of my medical bills. So I could understand that. But again, nobody has a deep backstory here. There's just like vague money issues. Yeah.
And so that whole situation is very weird. It honestly gets weirder as we go on with that particular guy. She keeps referring to her boyfriend as a douche, which is very much a like, I guess we can't use the word asshole in this movie.
Yeah, I guess.
And, you know, he does do the like, oh, I should thank the douche for the garments he provided.
We get his name finally. It's James, which is more medieval than Cole.
Right.
But also a good ex-boyfriend name because most James are douche. So
yeah, fair.
I'm good for it.
Fair. So they go back home. Where they then find different Netflix Christmas movies to watch.
Yeah.
This movie is just Netflix advertising itself.
But also trying to build a cinematic universe. I don't, like,
Yes.
that causes implosion, guys.
Yes.
Don't do this.
And then how does Amazon fit into this universe? Because Alexa is there.
Yeah.
And, he's like instructed to like ask Alexa for things.
Like, I guess you can't use Google's. I don't want mine to go off. And because probably more money. And I guess like, oh no, sorry, because you want it to have a lady's name or someone's name. And so that he's, talking to Alexa or
like,
whatever.
Lady Alexa.
Yeah. Make one up.
Right. It seems weird that they didn't do a fake one as opposed to the actual one. But yeah, I mean, because I can see, I guess, yeah, it makes sense that Alexa might have been like cheaper than like Google or like Siri.
Yeah. But it is also weird not just to make up your own.
Yeah. It's also like really impressive that he figures out the remote so quickly and is like fascinated, but also again, very chill about TV and not like, what are these moving pictures? Yeah. Where are the people?
Like the crone gave him some instructions and like a box of Mary or make Mary box. I don't remember exactly what she uses. And he's like, oh, that's what this thing is. Cool.
It's like, cool. It's the box that makes Mary. I was warned about this.
Yeah. I mean, entertainment plays, all that would have been a thing. So I guess like I just expected him to be up touching the screen or trying to like, how do you make the people so small?
Right. Or, yeah. Like where are the people?
Yeah. There's no fascination. I mean, not even can knights read? Was that was education?
By the 14th century, he probably would have had like some basic literacy, I would say.
Because, I mean, obviously it's going to be very different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that was part of my question is because I'm reading Game of Thrones at the same time and there's a guy that's in it and is going like, I guess, in his 40s or 50s or whatever is finally learning to read. And I was like, could knights, like, was that a thing or did they have someone read for them? So just like that added later of like understanding a remote.
Right. Yeah.
How to pick things on Netflix.
Yeah. I mean, so it would depend on his family. Like, it would depend on his family, but it does seem plausible to me that he would be literate. I mean, the bigger problem is, of course, that they never get into is, of course, that as anyone who has read Chaucer knows, which is relatively close-ish to this time period, Middle English doesn't sound that much like modern English.
Yeah, like when I read Chaucer, I had to read it out loud because I couldn't understand it otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. It's quite noticeably different, and it would be hard to puzzle out exactly what somebody speaking Middle English was saying, and I'm sure the same would be true in reverse.
Right. Yeah, we just ignore all of that.
Right. But it's okay also because he learns all of modern slang and how to do an American accent.
I do appreciate that all modern slang gets done in an American accent. Like,
I know, right?
Just adding another layer of like, wow, Americans are low.
Right.
Commonly.
Not that he knows what Americans are, so.
Yeah, true.
So he like basically spends the entire night binge watching and has also put Alexa in the freezer as punishment.
I did appreciate that. There's a TV show called Evil, and one of the episodes uses like Alexas and like demons talking through Alexas, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm all for hiding Alexa. Like she is an evil device. I say as I just got a Google Home, so I'm always afraid I'm going to set off. So
Brooke's sister comes over, and she goes like really fast from "Why are you letting this crazy person in your house?" to "Who's the cutie? Let's give him some muffins. Here's like 4 bags of clothing for him from my boutique that I own."
Yeah.
Another like mysterious, how do these people make money?
It would have made a little bit more sense if it was like a thrift shop or something, but
right.
Yeah.
It's not. It is a boutique.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she goes very quickly from like, I don't trust this person to let me do everything I can for you and like you're going to marry him, right?
Yeah, it's strange. Like they keep talking about how wonderful he is and how awesome and chivalrous and everything. And I'm like, there's no real depth to figuring out him as a person. I don't know. There's no depth to anybody here.
Yeah. And it's also, they skipped the part where he does anything especially nice. Or well, they put it later, but they put it later after everybody likes him already.
Yeah.
It's like not clear why everybody transitions from like, I'm a little worried about this person I hope he's not going to snap and stab everyone. Like, they go just very quickly with no apparent reason from that to this guy's amazing.
There's not even like a vibe of where a lot of holiday movies where it's like you've been alone too long or you need someone to like, you just need someone in your life kind of thing, or like you should be. No, there's, aunts are cool, and her sister doesn't ever seem to push for like you should be dating, you should be trying to get over your ex.
Right.
In the beginning, like there's no
Which is nice.
real reason for this sudden like this is the one.
Yeah, it's very odd and out of nowhere. They go to buy a Christmas tree, which Cole definitely remembers having in his time. I'll discuss that more later. She talks about how her parents are both now dead, which at least sort of explains the house situation, since I guess she inherited it.
She moved in to help take care of her mom, from the sounds of it, who was sick.
Right.
Which, yeah, would explain why she probably just stayed in the house.
Yeah. He tells her that he hasn't seen his parents since he was sent away to be a squire. And also is just like very chill about, he's like, yeah, I just like traveled in time. And Brooke's like, that's not a thing. And he's like, no, it's fine.
The moon comes and goes and dies is what he says,
right.
And it's, a new day, and if I'm in a new time, and that's cool. Like,
it's fine that I traveled 700 years into the future to a different continent that I don't know exists.
It'd be one thing if he was like, there are these stories, these are the folklore, anything that's just like, yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised because I've heard this my entire life, but it's just like, whatever.
Oh, right. Or it's also, and this is something I'll also talk about more later, but it's also that the closest they could get to kind of making that make sense and have it be a real medieval mindset would be for him to be saying things like, oh, well, all things are possible through God.
Yeah, there's
like, it's
no
fine. Jesus wants me to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is the least religious medieval person ever.
Yeah. Like, the fact that he's just not constantly praying away the witchcraft.
He also, they're buying the tree. He does finally tell Brooke that she doesn't have to call him sir anymore, so that's something.
Cool, so no longer a circle.
Real progress. Yep, real progress. Right, yes, it keeps sounding like they're saying circle.
Yeah.
Which is very irritating.
Which should have been the clue that, like, this is not meant entirely as, like, sincere. But also, I just couldn't tell with some of the notes that they hit.
I was also really just genuinely not sure how seriously we were supposed to take this.
Yeah.
They find a good tree, which he cuts down with one swoop of an axe. For him, this makes sense. But then there's this random middle-aged dude behind him who sees Cole do this, and then at this, like, standard toxic masculinity display is like, well, if he can do it, so can I. And the most surprising thing is that he can.
So, after watching this a few times, there is a guy in the background, and he is chopping prior to that moment. And so I do think, like, he got it prepped, and then this was, like, the final hit. But it is a weird thing that I had to, like, after I watched a few times, I noticed it. And also, it was redhead number 4. Like, there are so many redheads. If it's not her or her sister, it's a redhead.
Right. And only one of them is the one that she hates, who we'll get to,
I think,
in a bit.
Like, unless it's her repeatedly, but
I mean, it might be the same actress over and over again, but I don't think it's supposed to be the same character.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then, because apparently, I guess Brooke's just not that bright, she decides to let him drive her car.
I do appreciate that she asks, like, oh, do you remember how to drive a car now?
But he's like, yeah, I can figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't trust him. Especially when he starts hitting all the buttons. No, like...
Yeah.
I don't think uninsured motor driver whatever covers that at all.
Right. I mean, even if she is sure that he's not actually a time-traveling medieval knight, that doesn't mean that he remembers, or for that matter, ever learned how to drive.
Yeah, this is what day... So, the 18th he arrives. The 19th, they bend the entire day. So this is like the 20th or the 21st. Yeah. So... At most 3 days, 4 days, maybe?
Yeah.
Still not 100% sure he wouldn't just steal your car.
Right. I wouldn't let anyone that I'd known for 3 days drive my car.
Especially because it's a nice car. Like.
Yeah. She somehow has money for that very nice car, too.
Yeah. It is what it is.
Yep. Again, like, there's just these, like, things that he figures out that are very surprising. It's not surprising that he can't really drive the car or park. It is surprising that he figured out how to shift gears.
It is. And to figure out where he wanted to go.
Right. I'm not sure that it would be intuitive if you'd never heard of a car before, that if you, like, move it to R, that means reverse and you go backwards.
Right.
Like, I'm not sure that would immediately, and that, like, D is direct. Like, I'm just not sure that these would immediately occur to you.
I mean, he was watching so fascinated in the beginning, but again, like, I remember learning to drive a car.
Yeah.
Occasionally, I still have to remember, N is neutral, R is reverse.
Right.
It's okay.
Yeah, it just doesn't really make sense that he would figure it out that easily.
Yeah.
He drives into town. He goes, I'm actually kind of missed why he's going to town. I guess he just felt like it, and then he, like, wanders over to the Christmas village.
I think it's from, again, not my first watch, but after a few watches, I think he seems to think that his quest is going to take place at this Christmas fair.
Right.
Like, that is the center.
There's a lot of bits where he just keeps seeing random older women and being like, hey, old crone. And it's the one, it's, I guess, like, the person who's playing Santa and Mrs. Claus at the village, yes. And the Santa dude is like, could you stop calling my wife an old crone?
I mean, that guy's the hero of this. Like, I truly appreciate him being like, my dude, stop.
Like, this is kind of rude. And then he's, like, invents this mythology about, like, yes, an old crone. An old crone is a wise woman whose job it is to test knights.
You know, it's not an insult. It's not like I'm calling her a hag.
Right. But it's also, like, this isn't a thing.
No, it's not. Like, I Googled the word crone. It's implied that it's a thin, ugly, like, old woman.
Right. Or, you know, I could see the argument that it's not, in a medieval context, inherently insulting as opposed to a more normal thing to call an older woman.
Yeah.
But it also doesn't have all of these, like, weird connotations either.
Yeah. Also, this is a time period of, like, super religion, from what I understand, and not mythos like this.
Right. Like, not that they can coexist to some extent. I mean, obviously, you know, Arthurian stuff is very popular at this time.
True. And Beowulf and
yeah, but those honestly, like, coalesce. I mean, if you read, so for example, like, I recently reread Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which is 15th century and Arthurian, and it's Arthur, and they spend, in every 5 minutes, they're like, oh, Jesus help, like, Jesus is helping me with this, like, and I prayed to my Lady the Virgin Mary. Like, it's all combined, and so the fact that he never refers to Christianity at all is odd.
Yeah, like, Jesus sent me here, the Virgin Mary. Calling everybody Mary would have been a lot of fun, actually.
I would have loved that if just every time he, like, saw some, like, random woman wearing blue because she's the Virgin Mary is often wearing blue in medieval painting, he just, like, throws himself to his knees and he's like, my Lady Virgin.
Actually, that would have made this better.
That would have been an amazing movie. And I guess Brooke just shows up at some point. I guess the police officer Stevens, just called her at some point being like, we found your car just, like, on the side of the road with the doors open.
Yeah, are you alive? Are you okay?
So she finds him and collects him. He excuses his driving just utter fail by saying, I fear she's the loyal type who answers only to you.
You know, I started thinking, like, what would make this movie better and, like, a little bit more sense. And you just bought a car.
Yep.
Did you name your car?
I thought about naming my car, and then I never actually came up with a name for it. But
okay. I always named my cars. My last one that I just sold was Amelia because she's a fiery redhead. Mm-hmm. And it would have been great if she had named her car Sherwin or something like that. Just that, like, smallest connection of, like, your steed, my steed. They're both named Sherwin. I think I would have actually just fallen in love with this movie in that case.
I think that would have been really fun. Yeah. I would like to name my car, and specifically I would like to actually give my car a medieval name because I think that would be, like, a funny tension. So
can I recommend for you Blake Keaton? I'm sorry. Blake is, like, the most frat boy name on this list, and so I will
really
keep using it.
There was also a Dalton, wasn't there?
Yes. Dalton Hurst, who definitely goes to Yale for, like, the 5th generation. And
she takes him home and shows him a live stream of the Tower of London, and he comments on that there is an extraordinarily large number of prisoners.
It's a weird thing to set up. of all the things to be like, all right, like pull out history books, take them to the library. Here's the history section. I mean, it's cool to show modern London. That I actually really do appreciate that.
Yeah.
But it's just a weird, like, I don't know, the day started, these are such, so he's got 7 days or something. It starts on the 18th, yeah, a week. And it's always just like a 5-minute clip of a day. Just going to buy the tree.
It's
just watching the Tower of London. Yeah.
And also implies that he must be spending 80% of his time watching Netflix.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what we all do. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, fair. He meets Claire, the niece, who asks him if girls can be knights, and she immediately says no, and then Brooke says yes, and he stops arguing very quickly, which I don't buy, but it's really very nice.
It is nice, yeah. I think it's the look she gives him was very much like a don't argue this.
Yeah, and again, very, very nice that this medieval knight is in no way sexist.
Yeah, it is great. Yeah.
Very nice of him.
This is the moment, like, because they come over to help do the tree trimmings, or there's a word for this. Like, I don't know. We put up a Christmas tree. We don't make a big deal about it. And
I'm
there's
Jewish.
like,
I definitely don't know what it's called.
I actually had my first Hanukkah a few years ago. It was great.
Oh.
I'm very excited. I think I'm going to be home in time for it again. My stepdad's girlfriend's family is Jewish, so.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
This year, I think Hanukkah and Christmas coincide, so.
Oh, good, because I'm going home. So hopefully I can go have fun with that again. It was great.
Nice.
But what I was saying is tree trimming. I think that's what I don't know what this is called. We called it putting up our tree, but apparently there's a fancy term for this. And the mom or the older sister is holding this like big acorn ornament and talking about how this is that her parents got this on their trip to, I should have wrote down the country, but it's the country from the princess wedding, the Christmas princess with the chick from iZombie, which started like the joke about the Netflix cinematic Christmas universe, like is in this one moment that everybody's just like, you've already got Vanessa Hudgens starring as twins and another one with like a sequel coming out of that. So is this like slowly making the fourth one? I don't know.
Yeah, and this was, we'll get to it, but this definitely, I think, was setting up a sequel.
Oh, definitely. But also, her parents traveled, this country's in Europe somewhere, so, like, again, just setting up family money. Who knows what's going on here? Yeah.
So they get this ornament. Vanessa Hudgens is wearing these plaid wide leg pants, which Vanessa Hudgens has a great body, and even her, like, these do not look good on anyone.
I love these pants, but you're right. They don't. I love them because they're so comfortable, and I always feel like I'm wearing pajamas. But yes.
I mean, I think they would be amazing pajamas. Like, if I had pajamas in that pattern, I'd be really on board.
Yes.
But those don't even look that comfortable.
Hers do tend to be like the tweed or like wool ones. Mine are all breezy.
Yeah.
I love them.
Yeah. Sister is, being very optimistic about the fact that, eventually he'll get his memory back, and then we'll figure out he's just a medieval enthusiast.
It works.
And Vanessa Hudgens, meanwhile, is starting to slowly believe in time travel.
But there's no explanation as to why.
Nope. She's just like, I don't know. He seems into it. I like him. So I guess this is a real thing, maybe. Who knows?
It's not his, pot-marked face. Bad teeth.
We also definitely are increasingly really getting this sense of this idealization of medieval knights and knighthood, where she's like, oh, we sure could use a lot more coals in the world. It's like, knights are like marauding.
Yeah, they're not necessarily good dudes.
Like, this man has killed people.
Yeah. And honestly, likely for fun.
Yeah.
Again, I'm reading Game of Thrones currently, so all I can think of are the knights in the Game of Thrones world, and they're not good people.
Right. And that's very much, an area where he drew on real depictions of medieval knights. I mean, for example, we have these texts that are basically peasants writing to complain about how their local lords and the knights associated with that lord are like going to their farms and like trampling their crops and stabbing people for fun.
Because they could.
Right. And that you would do that to, and especially, that you might also want to do that to the people who are the peasants associated with the lord next to you, who you are having a feud with, that you would go and attack their peasants in order to make a point about how they're incapable of protecting them. I mean, so like this is the kind of thing that like violence is his everyday way of being.
Yeah.
And in this movie, it's no, being a knight is all about being very polite.
Yeah, it's about taking care of the smaller people, and that's not what being a knight is. A knight
Nope.
took care of the king.
Right. And oppressed the smaller people. So
Yeah.
He teaches Claire to sword fight, which, again, not very likely, but it's very nice.
Yeah.
He then, I guess, did not get sufficient exercise for that because he intensely spars with Brooke's Christmas decorations.
It is the next day, to be fair.
Okay, yes, that's the next day. I guess it's like, okay, I got like a little practice in yesterday, but now I need to, I need to fight the like glass deer or whatever it is. Not glass, the like light up deer. And then we get actual introduction of the redhead, who is a character more or less.
It is Brooke's neighbor.
Yeah.
Yes. And it is implied that they've known each other probably most of their lives.
Yep.
She doesn't talk to Brooke at all. Like all
she
the
only
conversation.
Talks to and flirts with Cole. Yeah.
Yeah. Which was hella weird.
So weird. It's implied. So Brooke basically calls her a slut. She doesn't use that word.
Yeah.
She uses the like Netflix "we're not cursing in this movie" way of calling her, which is like she's very much not a damsel in distress, and like she is such a flirt. And it's implied that there's like some beef, and I'm like, to which I'm almost wondering like, are we going to find out that like the boyfriend cheated with this person? But we do not get that backstory.
No, like she was voted something flirt in high school, and none of which is bad. There's nothing wrong with this.
No. The hostility really makes it seem like there had to have been like that there had to have been beef in some way.
Yeah.
But we don't know what that is.
I almost want to read or find out if there was like an original script that so much got cut out of.
Right. But yeah, again, there's just so many backstories which are not here. And also Brooke just apparently like does not have female friends except for her sister. So
yeah, she doesn't have female friends that are her age.
Right. She actually doesn't have any friends who are even approaching her age except for her sister.
No. Yeah.
All of her friends are like her parents' friends.
Yeah.
Allison invites Cole to go caroling with her, and Cole turns her down because he realizes that Brooke will be very upset, and very much kind of presents this idealistic version of, yes, knights, again, they would never cheat on their partners. Okay. We're not talking about a period in which adultery is basically defined as something women do to men and not something that men could ever do to women.
Yeah, and also, like, they're not an item, so it wouldn't have even been adultery, and I don't...
Right. The next chunk of the movie is then taken up with this really elaborate Christmas dinner, which seems to be a thing that Brooke's parents started as a thing for their friends that Brooke then turned into this major charity event in their memory.
Yeah, we never get, like, a standpoint of when her parents died, other than, like, it's been a while. It kind of still feels new in some parts, but then, like, the Christmas ornament where, you know, he pulls out a box and why pull the box out of the attic if it's your mother's things, but whatever.
Right.
And then, yeah, it started as literally like a meal for those who had nowhere else to go, like a Friendsgiving almost.
And now it's this big charity thing because, as she says, Christmas is about giving back. It's not clear to me. I guess maybe they sell tickets and then donate the money to charity is the idea.
Yeah. It's also, again, small town, like...
How is this a thing?
At the actual event looks to be maybe 10 people. It doesn't...
Right, unless this is like $100 a plate dinner.
Yeah.
It's really not... I mean, you know, very nice, but like it's honestly like considering how much food they buy is how much, like, is this really... Like, what is this accomplishing?
Yeah, it's a very weird... It looks smaller than what is implied.
Right. She's also super patronizing to the one poor dude in town about how it's so nice that you're still involved in charity and give back even though you're poor.
Yeah, it's like everybody kind of knows that he's going through a hard time, but also like nobody knows that he's going through a hard time.
Except that there's like, they kind of talk about it behind his back and make these weird patronizing comments to him about like, oh, it's so good of you to do this. I mean, you especially.
Yeah, it's so good of you to teach your children, you know, money is not everything because you don't have it.
Right. And then there's also just a lot of like the children being like, why can't we have presents this year?
Yeah, it's also gloves. Like,
yes, he can't afford to buy them gloves.
Yeah, I just...
Yeah, I mean, it's also just like very weird the extent to which like they're sometimes presented as like basically like middle class and they've got debts and things aren't great.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's like, I can't buy my children like appropriate winter clothing.
I mean, I get kids grow fast, and like the people that spend
Yeah.
hundreds of dollars on shoes that your kid will literally only wear for 5 minutes. I've never
Right.
understood that mindset. But I want to say this, and I don't mean it patronizing. You can make gloves.
You can also go to a thrift store.
That too. Yeah. Like, this is
mean,
possible.
I don't believe that this man cannot go to a thrift store and buy clothing to keep his children appropriately clothed in the winter, and honestly probably put it on a credit card.
Yeah.
Worst comes to worst, obviously not that that's like ideal to get in like more debt, but better than your children not having gloves.
Helping charity is great, but instead of maybe like spending all this money to help charity, buy your damn kids some winter clothes.
Yeah, it's so weird. They go to the grocery store. Cole has a second really fancy coat, by the way.
Yeah. I'm wondering if he's like, if they're basically taking these clothes from the shop and then putting them back on the mannequins or something. I don't know.
That's what but like, does that mean he's wearing them with the tags?
I don't know. I mean, she can put new tags on it. It's her boutique.
True.
But it's weird.
Over the course of these several days, it seems like he's wearing like thousands of dollars of clothing, including, as I said, like 2 very nice wool coats.
Yeah. He also has this like great maybe cashmere sweater that I coveted for a few minutes. And,
yeah,
you know, and this is a guy who essentially wore rags. Medieval clothes aren't, I mean, the wool ones are probably great, but you don't need to put him in anything fancy.
And I mean, you know, he's probably well off enough that he would have had like decent like wool linen clothing, but also like he would be fine with something a little less fancy. Like, again, go to a thrift store.
Yeah. I almost feel like he would be insulted because he talks about how his mother was a seamstress and made all of his clothes and their clothes or whatever. I feel like he would almost be insulted by like the amount these clothes, unless he thinks that her sister's just making them.
He wouldn't know how much they cost, but something like a good quality cloak in the Middle Ages is an extremely expensive garment. Like so much that like this would be like a part of a woman's dowry. And the expectation, and like that is because it is an object of value. Good quality textiles are extremely expensive. And so the fact that, and so it is actually weird that he never has a moment where he's like, this is like a lot.
Yeah. Or even just like something about taking ownership and appreciating like having one good coat.
Right.
Rather than wearing multiple. Yeah.
Right. Like somebody who's like a knight, but he's like a knight relatively recently. He doesn't seem to have come from like an especially well-off family. I mean, to make it make any sense, I would say he really has to be like probably like minor nobility, but like often minor nobility in the 14th century really don't have a lot of money. I would say he probably has one good winter cloak.
Yeah.
And so the idea that he's just like gifted 2 would seem very strange.
Yeah. They just really wanted the clothes budget. I get it.
And he looks great. Like, they're very flattering coats.
Yeah.
He starts, like, eating bread in the grocery store.
The grocery store scene in its entirety is probably my favorite thing in this movie. Because
it's, like, so weird and farcical.
The 4-year-old's back, where he starts, like, grabbing the big cans of hot chocolate and putting them in the cart. And she's like, we're not hunkering down for the winter. Like, you know, basically take one. And she goes back to his list. And the look he gives her as he's like putting them in the cart. He's like, we are taking this. This is my one true happiness.
He's sulky about it.
But he takes them all and she's just like, fuck it, whatever. Fine.
And he's put in the bath, this like one by one, like it's very much just like petulant child. It's so weird.
It's so great.
But yeah, so he like starts like eating bread in the grocery store and then comments on how like this bread is inferior and not sufficient, which he's not wrong about like random American like brioche rolls in a grocery store.
Yeah. It's not the Hawaiian rolls.
Yeah, right. He is apparently therefore an expert baker and makes instead Yuletide bean bread and teaches her how to knead bread.
I assume this is not a thing.
Parts of it are a thing and parts of it aren't. The Yuletide bean bread is not coming from nothing.
Okay.
The him knowing how to bake is the part that I call bullshit on.
I mean, we do need the scene of like him helping her, you know. That's always in a movie.
Yeah, it's like Ghost with the ceramics, but he's alive.
don't abuse the dough. Just gently fold it into its, yeah. I both love romantic stuff and also just it's too much.
It's very silly. It turns out that Claire and her friend who is I'm sorry, what is his name? Is his name David? I keep just calling him the poor guy.
David.
So Claire and her friend, who is one of David's kids, are missing. Cole manages to find them using his tracking skills.
It's like they've wandered into a national forest, just randomly.
Yeah, it's so odd.
Yeah.
He helps her get across this, ice that she's across. And then they have a whole thing where he's like, but this still is not my true quest.
Yeah.
And Brooke's like, are you sure?
Can you leave?
This is not also when you have the first of his especially kind of questionable conversations. So he's talking to the cop who then basically both of them come to the conclusion that knights and cops are the same.
Oh boy.
In a way that very much idealizes both, which in 2019 America is a choice, especially given that I believe it is that Ohio is one of these states in which cops have famously murdered Black people for no reason.
Yeah, it's a political choice that made me stop the first time I'm watching this and being like, did I just get tricked into some very red propaganda here?
Yeah. And, the night cop equivalency, if it's true, it's not true in the way that they're saying it's true.
No, not the way that they want it to be true.
Yeah, it's very much both knights are the idealized protectors of the, the unfortunate and back in the day, and the cops are the ones who do this now, etc. I guess is it Christmas Eve now?
No, so this is...
Do we still have another day?
Well, so same night. Claire has been saved. They're at Claire and her mom's house, and this is a strange man walks in that just had me going, yes. Oh, is Brooke married? Or just Brooke, is there a new boyfriend? Or an older brother? And it's, right. No, it's her brother-in-law that nobody has mentioned once.
Yes, never in this movie does Madison ever refer to my husband. Does Claire ever refer to her father? I was genuinely oh, cool, her sister's a single mom. That's a fun choice.
Yeah. Single mom, owns this great boutique.
Yeah, all right, good for her. I guess you got this house in the divorce,
Yeah. There you go.
But nope, he comes back. I guess he was just on a business trip and everyone forgot he was gone.
Apparently he's a lawyer. There's something about a case. But he also, so he's walked in. His daughter has nearly fallen in ice.
Yeah.
And he's like, I got off the plane. I had all these text messages. Didn't read them. Didn't listen to the voicemails.
Right.
Because he's just I had all these messages. Oh, hey, can you take your sister's gift? I'm going to go. And Brooke's just yeah, you should go figure out what happened today, my dude. They're upstairs. Go talk.
How does a parent not... I would freak out if I got that many voicemails.
Yeah.
How do you, especially as a parent, not be oh God, what's wrong?
I mean, at the very least, the time that your plane lands and you get service to the time that you get to the gate is usually about a 5-minute gap, if not longer. Yeah. What else are you going to do other than listen to those voicemails and read those text messages and just be hey, have landed, checking in now. No indication that he has any idea his daughter nearly died.
Right. It's bizarre. But I guess that's why nobody cared that he was gone for the first 3/4 of this movie.
Yep. He's just an absent father.
They go back to the Christmas village because of course they do. And we get the exchange that drove me insane where he talks about how romance in the future is much more complicated than in days of yore. And she goes, I prefer yours.
You know why?
Yeah, because you had arranged marriages.
Yeah, it was a business transaction. It wasn't romance. It was to better the land.
And that to the extent that there's romance, the romance is your performative, unrequited love for your lord's wife.
Yeah. It's so much more complex.
Not to mention, of course, the bit about how, I think I've talked about this on a previous episode, but it's also okay, we need to not idealize medieval romance when there is a medieval manual on courtly love that basically says if you're a knight and you have the misfortune to fall in love with a peasant woman, you should rape her so you're not worrying about it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a problem. Some kid who is, I guess, one of Brooke's students.
So I thought maybe it was the guy that dumped the girl in the beginning, but it's not.
No, I don't think so.
They named him. His name's Marshall. I think the guy that dumped her is named Garrett or something. And I was like, the fuck's the point?
Yeah.
The way she says the name, I just was like, okay, cool. So we're just proving that the girl from the beginning's ex-boyfriend is a total D-bag, and that's fine. It's not the same guy.
It's just some different guy who was also an asshole. I guess that's just like all of the boys in the school are terrible. It's fine.
Don't date any of them.
Yeah, exactly. She shouldn't. She really shouldn't. He just like tries to rob this, another like older woman, because there's like a lot of older women just wandering around this town. Yeah. And Cole gets her purse back for her and threatens to like cut his hands off, and they all convince him not to do that. And despite that, or maybe because of that, the police officer, Officer Stevenson, starts talking to him about how he should take the like exam to become a cop.
I mean, it'll be good to find out that, like, he doesn't have a social security number or a passport or, like, any proof of birth.
Yes. And not to mention that if he's going to pass the psych eval, he will have to lie because he still thinks, because he in fact is a 14th century knight. And if you say that on the psych eval, you're not going through. But yeah, but also, like, they're not going to, like, I'm not sure he can ever get a job. He certainly can't get a job for which you need background checks.
They do, at the very end, the line of, like, what he's going to do in 2019. He's like, maybe I'll become a cop or open a bakery. And I was like, let's go with the bakery route, because she can take the loan out for you, and you don't have to show any papers ever.
Yeah, that's really probably the best option, is that she will basically open a bakery, and he will, in practice, be the one who works in the bakery.
Exactly, yeah. Now a new day.
Now a new day. Sister comes over and gives them hot chocolate in a glass decanter, which no one has ever done in world history.
It'd be one thing if it was, like, if it was boozy, that'd be one thing. Yeah. You could make really good boozy hot chocolate.
Yeah.
But he's not been drinking it boozy. It's a Netflix. It's meant for family fun. This is not what this is. But this is a boozy glass jar.
Yeah.
What? Also, hot chocolate isn't good reheated, I don't think.
No, I would not want to have reheated hot chocolate. So so either it's cold hot chocolate that you're supposed to heat up, or is the decanter hot and they're all supposed to hurry up and drink it, in which case how are her hands not burnt? This is just not making sense.
It's also massive.
Yes, it's so much hot chocolate. Although considering that he wanted to buy like 14 containers of hot chocolate at the grocery store, I guess that part makes sense.
I guess.
Okay, so now it is Christmas Eve. Mm-hmm. They dress up. He gets more fancy free clothing. He gets a suit.
The suit was the first point that I was like, okay, maybe like he's just borrowing these because he doesn't need a full suit.
Right.
Also, he brings his armor with him to this party.
So he's wearing the suit for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, whatever.
She's wearing this like very fancy red lace dress, which is also like very form-fitting in a way that would not be considered appropriate in a medieval context.
Yeah, I do appreciate, I like really like the dress.
Oh yeah, it's a good dress. It's like definitely one of Vanessa Hudgens' better clothing items in this movie.
Yes.
She describes him as my knight in shining cashmere wool blend, which made my eyes roll out of my head, and now they're gone. Yeah. So that's just my life now.
Yep.
And gives him an orange and a halfpenny, which is described as a traditional gift. A thing that, by the way, I cannot find for the life of me where they even could have gotten this from.
I think it's more Victorian, if I remember correctly. And I couldn't tell you where I've gotten this. At some point maybe I'll be able to, but like I feel like oranges as gifts were very Victorian up to, it may also be just American, because like I know Little Women, the orange is a big deal, but I also feel like there's a couple other Victorian literature, Victorian England lit books that I've read where like oranges are a big deal.
Yeah.
And a sign of status or something.
Right. So they like introduce this like, oh yes, an orange and a halfpenny is a traditional gift, and she gives him an orange, and I guess not a halfpenny. She gives him like a quarter or something.
A $50, yeah.
Yes.
Because we don't use halfpennies.
Right. And this is then the first of like 12 moments where they almost kiss and then don't kiss.
Yeah.
So We're going to go with that for a while. So they're at the Christmas feast, which, as you mentioned before, also seems to be approximately 10 people.
Yeah.
There was this bit earlier where there was this woman who was complaining about her husband's back, and it turns out that the weird ointment Cole suggested of, like, ox's gallbladder or something has fixed his back problem, which, okay.
Things you can find normally.
Yep. They end up then, as the, like, climax thing of this Christmas feast, they give a bunch of gifts to the poor family.
They tell the kids that Santa delivered the presents to the wrong place.
Yes.
And then they give
them here instead of their home.
The dad a bunch of money. And it's just like, you could have done this better.
It's so performative and public in a way that feels very condescending, and I could see feeling very embarrassing for this guy.
Yeah, like, I appreciate that he takes the money, but also I can completely, like, I just felt bad for him the whole time.
Obviously, obviously he has to be grateful, and obviously it's great for the kids, etc. But, like, it's just this, like, insistence on we have to do charity in a way that everybody knows that we're doing charity.
Yes.
And that makes, like, us being able to feel good about ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, if they'd done this essentially privately and, like, or just, like, and, like, given and, like, told him, like, we're doing this, we're gonna, like, quietly deliver the gifts to your house tonight. Yeah. Just tell the kids they came from Santa.
Or just have someone slip out while this party's going on that he's part of, that his kids are at. You know, it's a small town. They probably all can get into each other's houses easily.
Right.
Deliver the presents, something, anything.
Yeah.
That wasn't, these kids are now going to have to walk out with all these gifts.
Right. And that it kind of makes it seem like then everybody in the like everybody in the town is like, oh yes, your bike that you got as charity from the rest of us.
Yeah. And like, I appreciate, again, if there was more of a backstory as to why he was having money troubles.
Yeah.
But some kind of like, here's a job, or, I mean,
right.
He has jobs, but like something, because all this is setting up is there's like 4 kids. I think all of them still believe in Santa. And what's going to happen next year when Santa's not as awesome.
Right. But like, are they going to do this every year?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, oh, I guess you were bad this year.
Yeah. Like, it's a weird vibe. Charity should not be performative.
It's also definitely an interesting moment, especially at this party, that it very much emphasized, like, it's a very diverse cast, which I think is fantastic. But it is also a little bit weird in the way that it's like, okay, this like small town in Ohio, and we are just going to pretend that there's like 0 racial tensions.
Yeah.
And it's just like very happily multicultural, which like obviously I get why they do it. It's like a feel-good Christmas movie, but
yeah. I mean, I appreciate it because I love seeing older biracial couples in movies and nobody making a thing out about it. It's just one of my favorite things. I also feel like Netflix, especially more than Hallmark and Lifetime, does try to add some diversity.
Yeah.
That isn't, I mean, this one still is, I don't know. It is still like the side characters are more diverse.
Right. The sister actually is Middle Eastern in background.
Okay. But it feels less like token best friend.
Right.
Than most of these movies end up feeling.
Yeah. The random redhead is at the party and goes in a heartbeat from trying to manipulate Cole into kissing her under the mistletoe to saying, oh, no, you're in love. Like, you should use this for somebody who it really means something with. And, here's the mistletoe. And so it's just this moment, like, why does this character that has 0 backstory that we know nothing about have a redemptive arc?
Because my guess is she is the lead heroine of the sequel.
Yeah, I think she's going to get together with Cole's brother.
Yeah.
Clearly. Cole and Brooke finally kiss under the mistletoe, and the medallion starts to glow. So, surprise, I get to go back into the past.
So, like, if she had been down, the first night, would he have... I don't get it. I just
then it wouldn't have been true love.
That's fine. I mean, sure, your one night stand or your, have sex on the first date can be true love, but yeah.
It's been 1 week, so it's clearly true love.
Oh, that's fair. 7 days. That's all you need.
It's actually not even 7 days. It's like 5.
Yeah. It's at some point you're going to realize that when Christmas is over and it's January and he is from the past and it's like mooching off of you completely.
Because he can't earn money because he has no social security number.
And is in love with Netflix and baking bread.
Career opportunities.
Yes. Oh boy.
So he disappears into thin air, which you would think would really solidify her in time travel, and instead she's initially just like super confused. It's like, Cole, you under here? But I guess she kind of figures it out.
Yeah, because she just goes home and the same night eats leftovers?
Yes, as you do. She runs into the girl from the beginning, her student, and her student's all like, he wanted to get back together with me, and I was like, no, I'm going to focus on my goals. And then Brooke is like, I was wrong. And I'm like, oh, you've got to be fucking kidding me.
It's a weird message because she's like, I was wrong and true love is a thing, but you should still focus on your goals first, but also true love is a thing. And you'll know it when you know it. And this is the kind of things that have completely ruined, like, I could have such a long tangent about, like, true love and, like, understanding romance and bullshit and how, like, it just has completely screwed up so much of culture. And also, don't do this. Just be like, cool. Focus on your schoolwork.
Yeah.
And have a good holiday.
Yeah, she does not need to essentially, like, give her this speech that is entirely about her and the fact that she, you know, found this hot guy that she liked and then he disappeared into thin air.
Yeah.
It's awful and really feels like it undermines, I mean, the whole movie is then ultimately about undermining this message of, like, honestly, maybe, like, don't prioritize, like, I don't know, that, like, it seems like the whole message is, like, insisting, like, yes, actually, like, romance should be your top priority, which is...
There should be balance. That should be the message.
Yes, and, like, that's something that's, like, told to women in particular, so the fact that she's telling this young woman to reprioritize that, as long as she, quote, knows it's true love, which, like, she's 16. She's gonna have, like, hope, like, plenty of relationships that she'll think are true love that won't be. Yeah.
Hormones are going to drive you insane. Don't tell a teenage girl this. Just don't.
Like, if she was 30, it would be fine to tell her, like, you don't need to be cynical, maybe, you know, whatever. But at that age, it's like, no, actually, just stick with your goals. That's great. Do not get back together with this asshole.
Yeah, it's fine. Really, like, you're going to date people. You're going to make bad decisions. That is a part of life, and it's healthy. Yeah. Just have things that you're shooting for.
Yeah, have balance.
And don't get married at 18.
Right. She goes home. She eats she eats one of the cakes and she gets the bean, which is what the Yuletide bean bread is, that if you find the bean, it's good luck and you get to, like, wish on the bean. So she wishes on the bean that Cole would come back. And also finds, the ornament that her parents brought back now says, like, with love always, Sir Cole.
Yeah.
How?
I don't know.
Is it magic? Did he get it custom made for her in 2 days?
He probably whittled it himself? I don't know.
Which is actually kind of a shitty thing to do with one of the things that she's like, this is one of my, like, 5 mementos of my dead parents.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, she finds this great. Cole returns to his own time. His horse, Sherwin. Sherwin immediately recognizes him and runs to him and is like, Cole, I love you. And his brother is standing over there and he's like, takes like 10 fucking minutes. And he's like, Cole? That you? Looking for you.
I do appreciate that, like, the relationship between this guy and his horse is that pure and important, because I feel like, given the fact that they don't drive, like, they're on these horses all the time, like, yeah, that probably actually is a very real relationship.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a reason that there are a lot of very prominent horses in medieval literature.
So, yeah, like, Sherwin, you can recognize him first. The fact that his brother's like, I had a brother, didn't I?
Right.
You went missing, didn't you?
And it's like, wait, was he gone 5 years? Like, no, he was gone like 6 days.
Yeah. It's like, you've just been kind of lost in the woods. I would have been more surprised if it was like, oh, yeah. Did you have to walk that whole time? You okay?
We looked for you for like an hour, and then we were like, well, guess he's dead.
Yeah. I was going to marry Matilda, like...
So then he's like, you know, is like musing with his brother and is like, and realizes that his quest all along was to go and fall in love. And that really he actually needs to go back to her. And then he just like takes off again. And he's talking to his brother and he's like, I'm going to miss your knighting ceremony. I feel so bad. And his brother's like, it's fine. What you're doing is more important. Why isn't he telling his brother, like, by the way, I'm never going to see you again?
Yeah, it's not like a, hey, by the way, I traveled in time.
And I'm going to go back to 2019, where you have been dead for 650 years.
Also, can you imagine 2019, my dude?
Right?
It is 1334. I have no idea what year it is. But it's like 2019.
Yeah. They have this thing called Netflix. It is amazing.
Oh, all these merry people running around in like this tiny little box.
I want
also,
that. And also this girl.
He breathed, like, took that 2019 air and breathed it on his brother, and thus that started the plague. The new plague.
It's only like 10 years before the Black Death.
I mean, like, I honestly would have appreciated if it was like, and this is how we got the Black Death.
Right, yeah. Which would have been great. It's 14 years too early, unfortunately, for it to make sense. But
damn.
We go back to 2019, where we learned that I guess Christmas magic is real because Claire got a puppy.
Yeah, like, fine. And
okay, so there's this puppy that neither of the parents want the puppy. And like, Christmas magic, this was a bad idea. Like, you should not get children puppies without their parents being on board with puppy.
There's probably a really good reason why they haven't gotten the dog. Time management.
Right. I mean, the husband, I don't know, as far as I can tell, spends most of his life going off on business trips. Running a boutique is probably a pretty intense work day. So they have like a pretty big work schedule. The 11-year-old is not going to be the one actually responsible for taking care of the dog. Like, these people, like, probably very genuinely do not have time to train and care for a puppy.
Like, I'm sorry, kid, but sometimes that's just how it is. Also, that's kind of shitty to waste a Christmas magic on a child that is fairly well off, gets pretty much everything that she wants on this dog rather than the family who can't afford gloves for their kids. But okay.
Well, the Christmas magic also granted her second wish of giving her aunt a boyfriend.
Fine. Fine.
So, yes, because Cole, back in his own time, runs off to find the crone, explains that he's learned that love is the first and foremost of all knightly virtues. Sure. Completely has transformed from being a perfectly nice guy who happened to not be in love at that given moment to being in love. So now he's a true knight.
Cool. There's no character development there. No.
So he goes back forward in time, and this time he gets to bring his horse. Yay!
I did feel bad for Sherwin.
Not his brother.
No,
his brother, he's never
his brother's
gonna
be fine. I mean, they probably would have become knights of different areas. I don't know. You know, he hasn't seen his parents in a long time either.
Yeah. He's fine.
It is what it is. Families aren't important. I don't know.
Right. It's like this, like, very much like, okay, so what we've learned from this movie is that your relationships with your family do not matter at all. And the only thing that matters and that you have to prioritize above all else is a romantic relationship with a person you have known for a week, for which you should essentially quit your job.
Travel.
Yes, move to the furthest away spot in both time and space that you could possibly comprehend.
And also become entirely dependent on said person.
Yes. And never see your family
again.
Not important. But at least you get your horse.
Thank God for the horse.
He and Brooke have a slightly awkward kiss while he's in full armor. And this is what she's like, so what are you going to do? And he's like, maybe I'll join this order of present-day knights. And it's like, oh
I did groan very loudly the first time and missed that the second time he says, or open a bakery. And I do appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe the bakery. She's wearing an outfit, by the way, which was very nice until it panned out to reveal her pants, which are like green candy stripes.
I want these pants so much. They're so perfect. I'd have a red sparkly scarf that I would wear, and I would just be like, this is my December outfit.
It's very holiday. It's Christmas. We don't know where they're going to put the horse, but I guess they'll figure that out. She's apparently very rich for some reason.
I'm sure she has a stable at her manor.
Yep. And then back in 1334, the crone shows up after Geoffrey, Cole's brother, has been newly knighted and gives him his own fancy medallion. So I guess there's going to be a sequel and maybe he'll make Redhead, I don't know, not be a slut anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Like, I mean, I just don't get I guess the implication is once you become a knight, you have to have a quest to become a full knight or something. I just don't get what the implication is here.
That seems to be the claim that they're making.
Yeah.
It's not a thing.
No, it's not.
Which leads into the next section, Vera et Falso, where I'll talk about what this movie got right and wrong about the medieval world.
Excited to hear this.
I'm going to start with some things that actually they got right. So first of all, I actually do appreciate that he takes a bath, because medieval people did bathe not as much as modern people, but more than we think they did.
Okay.
And so it probably was at least that, like, he would probably bathe once or twice a week at least.
Okay.
Which, you know, not as often as we bathe now, but it's not like they bathe like once a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is the perception that people often have. So I appreciate that he kind of shows up and he's like, I kind of want to take a bath. Skunks are an animal from the Western Hemisphere, and it does therefore make sense that he would not have recognized a skunk and been concerned about what a skunk might do to you if you're going after it with a sword.
Did you already know this about skunks, or did you Google
No,
skunks?
I looked it up.
Oh, okay, cool.
I looked it up. Yeah, I was curious as to whether he would have known what a skunk was or not, and I looked it up, and they, in fact, are Western Hemisphere
Very cool.
animals, so he would have not seen a skunk before. I think his experience of Alexa really works.
It could have been more witchcrafty, but yes, like the fact that he's like, I don't like this.
So, the Middle Ages, people weren't actually quite as into like witchcraft in particular as we think they were. Like witchcraft is slightly more of an early modern phenomenon.
Okay, yeah, I guess just more of like
an evil spirit.
Yes, yeah.
Is, I think, what would have made sense. That there would have been this emphasis on like, is this some kind of like malevolent demon?
And the banishment is great.
Yeah, I think they could have done more with it if they'd acknowledged religion.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to. But for what they were doing, that kind of worked. They mentioned that he was sent away as a squire and hasn't seen his parents in years. That actually tracks. Like, that would have been pretty common, that he would have been sent away as a squire and very possibly might not have seen his parents. It does seem a little unlikely they wouldn't have showed up for his knighting ceremony if they're alive.
Okay.
That seems like it would have been a special occasion that they might have tried to come for his and then again for his brothers.
That makes sense.
But it does make sense that he would have, like, it's normal that you would have had, as a medieval person, potentially gone very long periods without seeing your parents as a squire or other kinds of apprenticeship-like positions.
Parents aren't important. That's not true.
It works that he has tracking skills, that this is something that, you would have, like, learned as part of your skills as, somebody in training to become a knight. That works. There's a couple things that they're not wrong, but they kind of leave out a lot.
Okay.
One of those is, so he refers to the fact that he was knighted by Edward III, which makes sense more or less based on the date. It's 1334. He said he was knighted 6 years before. And so that would have been 1328, and Edward III became king in 1327.
Okay.
However, it is, I think, worth noting that it doesn't really quite get into anything about who the figure of Edward III actually was, and in particular the fact that in 1328 he would have been, first of all, probably younger than Cole, and also that the court would have been awash with rumors about the fact that Edward III was at that moment sharing power with his mother and his mother's lover, and somewhere between the three of them, somebody had definitely ordered his father, Edward II, the previous king, murdered.
Okay.
So we're going to skip that. And we're also going to skip the fact that between Cole's knighting and 1334, what he would have actually been doing was fighting in a series of wars with Scotland and with the French.
Okay.
And so it's, again, like, this knighthood is about basically courtesy and not at all about military prowess or violence.
Yeah, like the fact that there's no mention at all of any kind of war.
Yeah, and so he very clearly, like, he has fought in wars. He has killed people. Like, he was a soldier.
Again, he's very clean and polished for someone who would be a soldier of 6 years.
Yeah. And very polite. I mean, there's this whole, like, courtly love tradition, and there's obviously knights, like, switch between behavior that they have, like, on the battlefield or with, like, just their male comrades versus in court. But they're also much, like, rougher around the edges than Cole is depicted as being, which makes sense. The other thing that I think they kind of did for the good line, but that they very much oversimplified, is the Tower of London. Because, so he sees it and he kind of remarks, what an extraordinarily large number of prisoners. And he would have been very much aware that the Tower of London in his own time did not function exclusively as a prison, but also is actually a functioning royal palace.
Okay.
So at least occasionally, all of the kings would be in residence there. There are towers that his king's grandfather, Edward I, specifically built to be part of essentially a royal palace complex within the Tower of London.
So, yeah, so tourism would have already been a thing.
Or at least, like, there would have been a lot of people going to the Tower of London for reasons other than being a prisoner. That, like, it would have been, like, the king and the king's huge household and the king's guests.
Okay.
So maybe not, like, tourists going to see the grounds per se, but that there certainly would have been a lot of people who had a lot of other reasons to be there.
That makes sense.
Then there's some stuff that it did not do very well.
It tried.
First of all, medieval names. There are, like, 10 names per religion, per gender, basically.
Yeah.
Cole is not one of them.
No.
At all.
I think it's German, isn't it?
I guess. But it's also just, it's not a thing. Like,
I mean, like,
nobody
it's like,
is named Cole in
I feel
the
like it's a
14th century.
vegetable. Yeah, it's not like a name.
Right. I don't know when Cole started being a name. I didn't check. But the answer is not the 14th century.
Yeah, no.
This is the height of... if they were being accurate, there would have been like 7 dudes named Henry.
Yeah. Like Henry, James, Edward.
Richard, Charles.
Yeah. Any kind of just old name. Biblical names
Right.
almost. But not even biblical because it's not like, you know, Samuel's or Adams or anything like that. It's just, I don't know.
It's like the saints' names.
Yeah.
Francis is increasingly a popular one around this period because of Saint Francis.
What about like, so their middle names were Alexander, Edward, which we said Edward. So I guess Alexander.
Alexander's like maybe not unheard of, but a little weird.
Okay. Christopher, Frederick.
Frederick in Germany, yes. In England, I don't feel like I've come across it as often.
Okay.
But it would have been a German name.
Yeah.
Of the period.
Okay.
Christopher would work.
Yeah, because they're Geoffrey, Alexander, Edward, and Cole, Christopher, Frederick.
Yeah.
Cole could
Jeffrey,
have been...
his brother's name, is a solid one.
Yeah.
That one works. That's the only one that really works.
Yeah. Spalding.
God.
They tried. They did not try.
I don't know where they got these names. And especially it is frustrating because if they'd done a very small amount of research... I haven't actually looked into this, and I don't do medieval England, but it's not hard to find just lists of names, basically, from the medieval period. And I bet they could specifically find a list of names of 14th century knights, that if they're going to just have a list of names, they actually could have done that.
Like, I also would have been a great scene of them just, like, Googling knights of, you know, this time period and being like, oh, look, Sir Cole. But...
Right. And then it's also... He also doesn't find any other people's names weird either, which, because his name is so ridiculous, it makes sense. But it's also like Brooke and Madison. Like, I feel like if a medieval person met 2 people named Brooke and Madison, he'd be like, what?
Yeah.
Like the river?
Yeah.
Like the water? Like,
your
not
parents were not very original. Or like, you know, weren't they... And maybe this is the wrong time period, but it's usually like, weren't you named for someone?
You'd often be named after, I mean, sometimes your own parent. Fathers often would name their firstborn sons after themselves, so you often might be named after a parent or a grandparent. But it also is just even like, there just aren't that many names. I have actual families in my documents from Catalonia where there's a couple who happen to be named Francesc and Francesca, which are the Catalan like male and female versions of Francis.
Yeah.
And then they have a daughter who they name Francesca, who then marries a man named Francesc. And it's like, what is wrong with these people?
It's like 100
How
years
do they do anything at family
solitude.
dinner? Yeah.
Where everybody's got the same
But that is what things are like.
Yeah.
There just aren't that many names. And so, yeah, Cole is a no.
I mean, like, a nickname would have been better if his name had been Christopher Frederick or some bullshit. And then it's like, but we call him Cole because...
Right. I don't know why they would have called him
He
Cole.
liked to play in the fire. I don't know.
And then it's like, okay, is it just, do they make that up because they wanted to, like, have the circle, like, because I wanted it to sound like circle?
I guess. I honestly,
Maybe?
Is there a significance of a circle in this story? No, but I guess.
It's not really a circle. I mean, I guess it's like he goes backwards and forwards, but that's not really a circle.
No.
My mom's theory that she came up with while we were watching the movie is that the circle thing was going to matter, and that she was going to end up getting together with his 5 million times great grandson who was going to look exactly like him.
You know what would have been great is that if David had been that grandson and this had been some kind of plot to get her and David together. It was not.
No. The refrigeration also did not entirely seem right to me, since it's weird that that's the thing that he's most surprised by, since while obviously refrigerators are to some extent modern technology, they did know how to make rooms colder.
Yeah, like
in the Middle Ages. Like, you would have, like, if you were rich at least, you could have like an underground cellar and you'd bring in some ice and you would like leave the ice there, and that would be a good way to, it would be an additional way to help preserve food. It wasn't the only way to preserve food, but obviously it's, you know, lesser technology, but you still would be able to, in England, go into a room in June that was underground and had some winter ice that was at least significantly cooler than it was outside.
Yeah, like it's the one thread of technology that runs through this entire, like, there's so many more things he could be confused about.
To be honest, I don't understand why he's not more confused about how warm it is inside without a visible fire.
That is a good question.
Since it's winter.
Yeah.
So they just make such weird choices about what he's confused by. Handshakes, also, the claim that it's to prove you're not holding a weapon is a very common claim. And it's the kind of thing that I'm sure they found on Wikipedia.
I've never heard this before this movie. I didn't realize it was even like a cliche thing.
Yeah, I've heard it before. It's a kind of like, I don't know, like folk etymology is not the right word, but a like folk explanation to some extent that I have heard before. There's no actual evidence for it. And it seems to have been just a gesture of goodwill. To some extent, part of that is the ritual display of the fact that you're not carrying weapons.
Yeah.
But that's not quite the same as the, like, practical attribution that they give it, that, like, you have to, like, make sure you're not, like, hiding a weapon under your sleeve or something like that.
Gotcha. Also,
really calling bullshit on this dude knowing how to bake.
Yeah. On top of that the bread would be that good.
Right. I mean, I guess I at least, like, okay, like, actual, like, baked bread... It probably is better.
Yeah, but wheat has changed so much since, 100 years ago. But yeah, no, the fact that he would understand the concept of flour and, I don't know, it's just...
Yeah, I mean, so there obviously, like, were bakers, but it's not something that, like, serving in the kitchens like that and working with a baker would not have been part of a squire's duties, because your duties are, like, essentially you're supposed to, like, help out and train a knight.
Yeah.
So, like, he would be mucking out stables. He might have learned some basic cooking, but it would be like, how do I cook for myself and the knight I'm training with? How do I, like, cook on the road? Like, how do I, like, cook a rabbit on the road?
Also, the baker was a woman that he learned under, which also...
That actually... potentially track. Well, it tracks that like women would have been professional bakers.
No, that I can buy. It just is again an added layer of like respect for women that I wouldn't have would have expected from this time period.
Part of that also is that it's very rare. It's not completely unheard of, but it's very rare that women would be put in positions of power and authority and training responsibilities over men in that way. So my research is not England, it's Catalonia, but I have a lot of apprenticeship contracts for women who practice a variety of trades. And almost always they're hiring girls rather than boys as apprentices.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and it's because you don't want the everyday power hierarchies to subvert gender hierarchies unless there's also like some big thing going on with class potentially, then, you can get around it. But you don't want to be in that kind of situation.
Yeah, that wasn't happening in England.
Yeah, it does not make sense that they would have put him in this position where he's essentially working for a woman baker for this long period of time.
Yeah, for years it's implied.
For years, yeah, enough to like really have skills. And again, it's not even part of a squire's duties in general, that it's not something that a knight would be expected to know, and so it's not the kind of thing that you would have like had a squire do for you.
Okay.
He should be polishing armor.
Yes.
Taking care of the horses. Like, those are things that squires
rabbits.
do. Yeah, catching rabbits. Like, he should have been better at hunting than he apparently was.
Yes. Maybe, again, not to try to make this movie better, but like, if he had been hesitant about being a knight and had secretly wanted to be a baker or something, or felt like that was more his calling, would have been a better movie.
Yeah. And And the baker thing also, it would have made more sense if, I don't know, if he learned from his mother, or if it had been like when he was a kid, he like did this in a kind of unofficial capacity. And like, that's always what he wished he could have been. But everyone's like, no.
You had to be a knight.
That I could have seen. But yeah, it really doesn't make sense that he would want to give up his entire life, which he seemed very enthusiastic about.
Being a knight, from what I understand, was like a goal. And it was something that you worked incredibly hard for. And you didn't walk away.
Right. I mean, he easily could have been a squire for 6 to 10 years, say.
Yeah.
Then, of course, there are the lack of negative attitudes toward race and gender.
Yeah. Again, walking away from being a knight for a woman.
Yeah. That does not make any sense with the mindset of a medieval knight, where, like, the culture is very much a masculinity which is ultimately defined as, okay, there are kind of functions that women have, but it is ultimately a masculinity which is very much centered on a kind of sociability with other men that he is now completely losing.
She is now, I mean, she would be the main breadwinner for...
Right.
And that doesn't seem... That was not intentional, but yes. But it just doesn't track with this mindset of a culture that, you know, was probably women birthed kids and helped around the house, and that's it. And it's never a mindset of like, I will take care of you, or like, I'm going to stay in 2019 to provide, or, you know, give you that missing child that you need in your life to make your life complete. It's weird.
And, you know, there are situations in which medieval women could have power, but it would have been as essentially a kind of woman without a husband who, you know, ends up kind of taking on lordly functions as a widow or as his father's heir, or as her father's heir. And that's also not the position that she would be in.
Yeah.
I guess she is her father's heir.
But she's got an older sister, so like theoretically.
True. But he is very acquiescent to this idea that, like, sure, women could be knights. I mean, just the fact that he has not a trace really of misogyny, not a trace of casual racism, and of course the thing that is, you know, not that there are Jews in this movie, but the lack of anti-Semitism is particularly jarring, especially thinking about Norwich, where he's from, is actually the birthplace of the blood libel.
Oh, okay. Huh.
The first accusation that Jews ritually murdered Christian children was in Norwich in 1144.
Do you think they knew this?
I doubt it. I very much doubt that they knew that.
Because, like, the Blue Lives Matter vibe from this, knowing that, I don't know. It's a weird political line.
Yeah, so...
I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah.
Whew.
The next constellation of things I wanted to discuss, most of which are wrong, I'm going to lead into the next section, which is Historia et Veritas, where I talk about a real person or event or phenomenon. Because for this, I'm going to talk about real medieval Christmas traditions that could have been in this film, in lieu of the ones that were, which are not real medieval Christmas traditions. First of all, Cole talks about his fond memories of having presents under a decorated Christmas tree. Not a thing. Not a thing till at least the 17th century.
Yeah. Like, at best, they would have had a holly wreath, I think.
Yeah, like they would have had tree-adjacent objects that they would have used as decor.
But
they wouldn't have had, like, a big tree that you chopped down and then you decorated it.
There's no purpose for it.
Right.
And I don't know much about medieval times, but I do know that, like, for the most part, culture was not wasteful until, you know, mass industry, like the, you know, 1900s. So
people were actually very aware of trees as a natural resource. They're very much protected. The forests actually belonged to the king.
Yeah.
Cutting down tons of trees would have been a big deal.
Yeah, like...
It would have been extremely expensive, for one thing, like bare minimum.
And
it would have been extremely expensive. He is also deeply unsurprised by the figure of Santa Claus and his apparent importance in Christmas, despite the fact that the idea of Santa Claus as a, you know, gift-bringing figure, you know, all the traditional Santa Claus stuff, that's all 19th century.
He does call him Father Christmas, though. Come on now.
True. I do just want to note, however, that the medieval St. Nicholas was indeed associated with children, but it was because, according to legend, he miraculously resurrected 3 children whom a butcher had slaughtered and was in the process of curing in order to sell them as ham.
Oh my God. This movie could have been so much better.
Right? Like, it's not, like, exactly, like, why isn't he, like, asking about that?
Yes.
The orange and a halfpenny thing you mentioned might have been Victorian.
Yeah.
I was, having a hard time with that. I also want to note, while they would have had oranges, they would have been bitter oranges, and they didn't have sweet oranges yet.
Yeah, like, again, I cannot cite where I'm remembering this from, but I feel like toys were having, like, a resurgence in the Victorian time, like, and it was still a wealthy thing. Definitely would have been poor families that, like, fruit would have been a good gift for kids.
Yeah. And it is also like, okay, oranges, were potentially kind of like prestigious, maybe, but it would have been a bitter orange, which you would have used in cooking, which makes it a very different sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to sit down and eat a bitter orange.
Oranges aren't native to England, like.
Right, yeah, they would have been imported from Spain.
Yeah.
The thing it does best on is actually the Yuletide bean bread.
Okay.
In that there is a bread that would have had a bean or some kind of, or like a coin or something hidden inside one kind of slice or loaf or something like that. It would have been more of a like fruit and nut based bread, but be that as it may, it was a bread that was linked with Christmas. Although traditionally it wouldn't have been eaten probably on Christmas Eve. It was connected more with the Feast of the Epiphany, with when the 3 magi or the 3 wise men like came and hung out with Jesus. And then whoever found the bean in their slice would be named king or queen of the bean for the day.
I guess, like, of all things to put into a cake, a bean's gonna cook and be soft. Like, if you're not paying attention.
I guess maybe, like, if it's, like, a single dried bean, like, maybe it just becomes more dry? I don't know.
Maybe. I'm not going to try this.
No, I'm probably not either, but this is actually a thing, and this is actually the ancestor of the New Orleans king cake.
Okay.
Is this, like, idea of, like, you have, like, a little thing that you hide in the cake, and then somebody, like, finds that, and it's, symbolic.
There's also the pickle in the tree, but I think that's German, and it also might be fake German and maybe American that it says it's German.
Right.
But it's also, like, you find the pickle in the tree, and I think you get an additional present. I don't know.
Then there are some Christmas traditions that I think they should have included in this movie. First of all, the feasts. There would have been feasts, and I feel like they should have had him being maybe, like, a little disappointed at the feast.
It's a pathetic feast.
To give an example, of a fancy feast, we have administrative records which show what King John of England ordered for a Christmas feast in 1213, which included 24 hogshead of wine, 200 heads of pork, 1,000 hens, 500 pounds of wax, 50 pounds of pepper, 2 pounds of saffron, 100 pounds of almonds, as well as other spices, napkins, and linens. And he also sent an order to the Sheriff of Canterbury to supply 10,000 salt eels.
I mean, yeah, like, it was a 12-day celebration, I mean,
yeah,
it was, and I guess that's also a part of me sitting in the movie going is like, what is it about Christmas Eve as opposed to Christmas Day, or I don't know.
Or as opposed to like the 12 days after Christmas.
Yeah.
And then finally, the Christmas tradition that I think he should have been pushing for everybody to do is the election of a boy bishop, which was very popular as a Christmas thing in England. They would like choose some kid and they'd dress him up in ecclesiastical vestments, and then they'd have him celebrate a fake mass and preach a sermon and then do a procession.
Amazing.
And and this is actually something that some relatively recent kings, from Cole's perspectives, Edward I and Edward II, apparently we have records of boy bishops, showing up and saying mass before medieval English kings. So he should have been like, where's the boy bishop?
Also, Boxing Day would have actually been a thing.
Right.
Like, I don't know if it would have been called that, but
no,
Boxing Day would have like actually existed. So
right. I mean, and also it's that like in a lot of European traditions, like the date that's actually more important as a gift-giving day is actually not Christmas. It's the Feast of the Epiphany, because it's when the Magi gave gifts to Jesus.
Right.
Which actually makes sense.
Yeah. I just was thinking of like more of from the standpoint of charity. Like,
yeah, right.
Any focus on Boxing Day would have been nice.
Whereas no, it's just all about like this Christmas specific
Yeah.
charity. And then finally, Christmas, shockingly enough, is a religious holiday.
No.
On which you would like go to mass. That would be one of the
Yeah.
big things that you would do on Christmas. And so again, like the fact that he never is like talks about Jesus or the Virgin Mary or like a saint is just, it just doesn't make sense.
Or even like, so I am agnostic at best, and that's about how most of my immediate family is. And like we still did Christmas Eve candlelight ceremony because it's something my mother, you know, loves to do. And so it's like,
Yeah.
anything like that, any mention of going to some, nobody goes to like anything church wise.
Right. And I'm fine that the people in Ohio don't go to church. The scene that I actually really wish we'd gotten is Cole being like, can we go to a church?
Yeah.
And at some point somebody being like, okay, I guess so. And then like taking him to some like evangelical church and then having like Cole, the 14th century, you know, essentially Catholic Christian, being like, what the fuck is this?
That would have been great.
That's a scene that I wanted. So speaking of scenes that we might have wanted in this movie, the next segment, Fabula Nostra, is where we come up with the different, perhaps better movie that we would have liked to make in lieu of or inspired by this. So I'm going to have you go first because I went super weird and off the rails with this.
I just kind of like, again, I like these crappy Christmas movies. They're great. There's a couple things that I would have just really appreciated to make this better. As I said earlier, if her car's name had been Sherwin, I think that would have been a perfect way to make this circle. Any of the backstories, the Santa or Christmas magic for the poor family rather than the dog. But also, and here's going to be my weird one, I love the cloisters. There's an entire room of unicorn tapestries. I wanted unicorns in the 1300s. I want, like, you cannot convince me that unicorns are not real and extinct. So, like, I just want some unicorns in the background. It would have caused everybody else in the world to be like, the fuck am I watching? But I would have been so happy. I would have been like, unicorns? Because it is one of my favorite rants. It's just that unicorns are an extinct animal. Because why do we have so many tapestries of them if they're not? So I just want...
Well, but at least, like, they would have been, like... I mean, it's also weird because, like, he keeps spending all this time talking about dragons when, like, sure, they kind of like dragons. Like, but the mythical creature that they actually were more into were unicorns.
Yes.
I mean, because they're kind of metaphorically Jesus. But,
like, it's...
you know,
my friend...
everything's metaphorically Jesus.
Took her students to the cloisters, and I was like, there's a room full of unicorn tapestries. And she was just kind of like, that's fun. And then she was like, there is a room full of unicorn tapestries, guys.
They're so great.
They're so amazing. And I just, one, in the background, not like some big shiny thing, just like it's a thing. And then maybe he spends the movie being like, where are unicorns? Why did they disappear? What did you guys do to the unicorns?
The crone should have had a unicorn.
Yes! Perfect! It would have been great.
Crone definitely should have had a unicorn. Then he could, when he was calling all these old women crone, he could have been like, where'd your unicorn go?
Or like, you know, they all have like a unicorn pin or like some stuffed animal. I don't know. Just like the theme of unicorns throughout this entire thing would have added a layer that would have made me so happy.
And it's very medieval. I mean, because there's like two massive, like, famous sets of unicorn tapestries.
Yes.
This is also the one in the Cluny in Paris. So
I love them. They're so great. Also, if you ever get a chance to go to New York, anybody listening, go visit the cloisters. It's totally worth it, at the very least for the unicorn.
Yes, definitely one of my favorite places.
Yes.
Would you change the casting for this movie, or are you happy with it?
I have a deep special spot in my heart for Vanessa. I think that I love the High School Musical series. I think that she gets a weird rep for someone who is genuinely seems to be a good person and does work really hard. So, and she produced this as well. So I am all for letting her do her thing. I would have appreciated a little, I mean, obviously always more diversity, but again, there's like 5 or 6 redheads. Just like,
there's so many redheads.
You know, any kind of just everybody outside of the immediate family is kind of bland. Yeah. So that would have been great. Yeah. But yeah, no, I'm fine. Vanessa, do your thing. Like, if this ends up being, you know,
fair enough,
I'm all for it.
the sequel where they host Jeffrey and he falls in love with the redhead
Yeah.
neighbor.
Like, sure, the guy could have been more, but I found him entertaining when he was being a child, and so I'm okay with it.
Right. No, he was fine.
Yeah.
So I went really weird.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard about this, but Hallmark had this whole thing where they were like, we're going to make Hanukkah movies this year.
Yep.
And then they turned out to actually be like low-key super offensive. Like one of them is like, this woman brings home an actor to pretend to be her boyfriend, but it turns out he's Jewish. And he's like, what is this Christmas that you speak of?
Yeah.
Which is like...
Are they not releasing them now? I'm okay if they're not doing it, because, like, try harder. I'm
not sure what they're doing with them, but it's bad. So inspired by that, I would like Netflix to make a movie about a medieval English Jewish man, not from 1334, because there aren't any then, because they were expelled in 1290. So I guess from, say, 1234, who travels forward in time and then is super confused about why 2019 Jews think that Hanukkah is a major holiday.
Oh, I love that.
Because, like, it's really not in Jewish tradition. It's really pretty minor, and then basically became important in America because of its proximity to Christmas, and then became basically, like, Jewish Christmas.
What makes me sad is I did know this. I found this out not too long ago. Like, one of my friends converted when she got married, and she was explaining this to me, and this is, like, literally within, like, the last 6 years, and it makes me sad that that is not more well known.
Yeah, everyone assumes that basically, like Hanukkah is just like the Jewish version of Christmas, but part of that is the assumption it's a major holiday, which it's really not. It's also not, it's not biblical either. Right. It's, commemorating essentially a military victory from the 2nd century BCE.
Right.
There's also a lot of ways in which Hanukkah is actually super questionable and is really about the victory of religious fanatics, but I'm not going to get into that necessarily in this movie.
That's fine. Rugrats. Just watch the Rugrats.
I'll make this like the heartwarming version of a Hanukkah movie where, they learn about one another's traditions. Maybe in keeping with this movie, I'll have him actually be like super chill about the introduction of egalitarian Judaism.
Okay.
And he is definitely going to stay in 2019 since 13th century England is not an amazing place to be Jewish. No. So, like, that actually makes more sense than this person who is, like, kind of close to the top of the heap being like, yeah, I want to go and, like, I don't know, just hang out and be supported by this random woman in 2019.
I like this.
And I am going to cast Daniel Radcliffe, who is actually of Jewish background in part. And as my time-traveling Jew, and Rachel Bloom.
I appreciate this quite a bit. Is Netflix doing any Jewish holiday movies? I guess not. I guess I would have seen that announcement by this point. I feel like...
Yeah, I haven't seen an announcement, at least.
If anybody's going to, it'd be Netflix or Hulu over... I mean, Hallmark and Lifetime got to get it together, but that's a whole other story.
They did not do a great job.
No.
With what they decided to try to do.
No.
So, yeah, it would be nice if somebody in general did a better Hanukkah movie.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is my suggestion. Netflix, take note of how you should actually do this.
The fact that anybody created a movie where someone doesn't understand Christmas, like it's not the most commercialized thing.
It would make way more sense in reverse.
Yeah.
Some Jew, like, hires somebody to, like, come to, like, his, like, family's Hanukkah party. And then it's like, oh, fuck, I thought she had dark hair. I thought she was Jewish, but it turns out she's a Christian. Yeah. And, like, she has no idea what Jews do for Hanukkah. Like, that would make way more sense.
Yeah, it really would. Because I honestly, most people don't have a clue what goes on. Most Christian people. I would be all for this, any kind of movie that just wasn't Judeo-Christian.
Right.
Yeah. There is a Hallmark movie...
Yeah, and it's just like was such a weird choice. Yeah. So this is my suggestion for a better version of a Hanukkah movie, and also has the added bonus of this time it definitely makes sense that this dude is going to be like, yeah, no, I'm staying in like 2019 New York, as opposed to going back to like being a Jew in 13th century England.
Yep, I'm all for that.
We can now move forward to our rating for this movie in the section I call enumeratio, which is the closest I could find to the Latin for rating.
Okay.
How would you rate this movie? And the criteria can be whatever you want it to be.
So I am going to rate it as a Christmas rom-com. One of these, whatever. There's got to be a genre term for it, but I don't know it yet. And I'm going to give it a 1 out of 5. And the reason I'm doing that, it's not one that I'm necessarily going to watch again. The only reason that I've watched this more than one time is so that I could talk about it and get a little bit more of the nuance. But like, for me, a 5 out of 5 would be The Spirit of Christmas, which also has a plot that makes not a ton of sense. It's about a ghost. But
none of them do.
It's about a 1920s ghost haunting this house. And again, not a ton of backstory, but at least there is more backstory. But in watchability, I just don't feel this one quite has it. And I honestly feel that way about most of Netflix's holiday movies. Is that on the scale of like, I would watch again, none of the Netflix really hit high on that for me. So
yeah,
I don't mean it in a mean way. And I think like it'd be good to watch with a family, but I'm not going to watch this again.
Yeah. I definitely, as talking about it, have definitely kind of been increasingly inclined to be like less generous toward this movie. I'm going to give it a 1.5.
Okay.
The reason for this is because I just gave a 1.5 to El Cid, which is actually kind of fascist propaganda.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And I don't think I can give this lower.
That's quite fair.
But I think that is the most it deserves, is a 1.5. It's bad as a depiction of the Middle Ages. It's this, on the one hand, I appreciate that it's not one of those movies which is just like the Middle Ages. It was very violent back then.
Yes.
But this then goes to the opposite end of the spectrum of weirdly idealizing medieval knights, which is also not great and also wrong.
Yeah.
And then just like that combined with obviously the various details it got wrong, the complete absence of religion I always find very frustrating, and then the like super questionable politics of this movie where it both idealizes like 2019 Ohio cops and medieval knights is not great.
I think, if it definitely had left out the stuff about the cops, I would have been more inclined to be generous.
Yeah.
But the correlation between cops and knights as both being good things is not a good look.
No. It's very much like, I'm really curious as to who decided to like do the Blue Lives Matter plotline and why.
It's weird.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And are there places, I know that there are, where the listeners could find you on the internet, perhaps another podcast?
Yes. So easiest place to find me is my blog, which is meggriffin.com. It is Meg with 2 G's. And from there, all of my podcasts you can find, which I co-host Minds at Yerk, which is a bi-weekly Animorphs book reread, and a Judging Book Covers, which is a bi-weekly book club where we have a book challenge where we list of, types of books we want to read for the year that get us out of our comfort zone, basically. And we, by the time, I don't know when this is coming out, but I'm working on it tonight, we're putting together our 2020 book challenge, which we are very excited.
This will be the Christmas episode.
Okay, good. So you'll be able to find on my blog and I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Meg Griffin as well. You'll find our 2020 book challenge if you are also someone who feels like they kind of box themselves in when they read things. Meaning I just like, if I don't challenge myself, I read a lot of YA. So, and you just want something that'll help broaden your horizons a little bit. And then I have 2 defunct podcasts as well, and writing samples and book reviews and all that stuff, all on my website.
All right. Thank you so much. And all great podcasts. So everyone should go and listen to Meg's various podcasts. And if you have enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe in your preferred podcatcher app. We should be on all of them. And rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. I will read new 5-star reviews in future episodes, and I have one here from Chrissy Fred. Love the show. Sarah is incredibly knowledgeable and provides historical context in a way that is charming and makes me want to hear more. Sarah has an easy rapport with every guest, regardless of their personality or take on the movie of the week. Check it out if you like history, medieval or fantasy movies, or a real smart lady being charming as hell, which is a very nice review. I feel kind of embarrassed reading something so nice about myself.
That is all true.
Oh, well, thank you. Please also follow the podcast at Media-eval Pod and join our Facebook group. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Sarah Ipdecker. Or you can write me with questions and suggestions via email at media.evalpod@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to Media-eval. Bye.
Bye.